The world's largest fence spans over 3,100 miles from Queensland to South Australia. If stretched out, it could easily connect London to New York. And if you'd walk next to it, you'd need 6 months to complete the journey. It wasn't built to safeguard the Australian border. Why would it, since Aussies are just surrounded by water? It wasn't meant to protect some important building either. Its purpose is to keep some animal species away from each other. It was back in the late 1800s when Australians started building parts of this fence. They wanted to create a barrier separating the lively, bustling part of the country where cities like Melbourne and Sydney thrive from the harsh, dry outback. They used wooden posts dug deep into the ground, linked up with wire mesh standing about 6 feet tall. Some parts of the fence even have a second electrically charged layer. To make sure this fence did its job, they added some red and white lights to help guard things even at night. A team of over 20 people work full-time to keep things in check here. And every year, local authorities chip in around $750,000 to keep the construction in shape. Why all this trouble? The main reason was dingoes. These gingery, wolf-like creatures are Australia's largest carnivore mammals, and they're also apex predators. They were causing a lot of trouble to local farmers, especially in southern Queensland, where they often go after sheep. For the most part, the fence has been doing its job okay, but it's not foolproof. Some dingoes still manage to sneak through. Other times, wild camels end up crashing into it. That's because Australia has quite a massive camel population roaming around. But this man-made solution did more than locals expected. They thought there would just be fewer dingoes within the fence, but fewer dingoes mean more kangaroos. And more kangaroos mean more competition with the sheep for food. It's not just the bigger species feeling the squeeze. The smaller animals and the greenery also went through changes. With all this competition in a smaller space, locals noticed less diversity in the plant life and small animals. The soil became less nutritious over time, affecting plant growth. Plus, the fence acts as a roadblock for animal migration and seed dispersal. Even the sand dunes are feeling the effects, with less grass cover to hold things together. When scientists looked at kangaroos on both sides of the fence, they noticed that the young pups inside were lighter and tinier on average. The outsiders had bigger feet and heads for their age, and it wasn't because they were eating a different diet. The kangaroos that were stuck sharing the land with dingoes had to bulk up faster to survive. On the flip side, those inside the fence took it slower because they weren't under the same type of pressure. These had to compete with a lot of other creatures for food, so a bigger size wasn't a priority anymore. Researchers are still not sure if this difference is a quick fix or a long-term gene adaptation. What about domesticating dingoes? Wouldn't that help? Many think dingoes were once pets in Australia, but it's not known for sure. These days, they're pretty wild, just like wolves, hyenas, or coyotes. Most of them don't need packs to survive and are solitary hunters with sharp instincts built in. So taming them isn't going to be easy. Still, taking down the construction is not an option for now. Australians are so strict when it comes to making sure dingoes are kept away that they even put laws in place for people who mess up with the fence. Leaving a crossing gate open can put people behind bars for up to 3 months. Damaging the fence can cost people 6 months' worth of their freedom. It wasn't the first time Australians thought a fence could help with animal issues. Before they needed it for dingoes, they experienced a serious bunny invasion. Cute as they are, rabbits were damaging the land used for farming, so locals thought of a 3-part fence. The first one stretched all the way from Ravensthorpe in the south to Pardue Station on the Pilbara coast. It was over 1,100 miles long, making it the longest unbroken fence globally at the time. All these bunny problems could have been traced back to a man named Thomas Austin. Back in 1859, when he first came to the land down under, he thought it would be a good idea to release a few rabbits into the wild, thinking it would add a bit of charm to the place. But since rabbits aren't native to Australia, they didn't have any natural predators at the time. They're also pretty adaptive creatures, needing just some grass for feeding. They reproduce at astonishing speeds too. A mama rabbit can have 4 litters a year, with as many as 5 bunnies each. Pretty soon, their numbers boomed. By the late 1880s, the bunnies had caused so much damage that local authorities came up with a proposal. They'd offer the equivalent of almost $2 million today to anyone who could come up with a solution to this long-eared problem. Nobody claimed the prize, but a commission did gather a bit over a decade later and came up with the fence idea. Maintaining those fences was complicated. They had inspectors keeping an eye, with each one responsible for a stretch about 500 miles long. There were also these boundary riders patrolling smaller sections, using bikes at first, then switching to camels or using camels to haul buggies. They even tried using cars at one point, but they couldn't handle the rough terrain and constantly had punctured tires. In terms of its effectiveness, well, by 1902, rabbits were already hanging out on the wrong side of the fence. That's why, 4 years later, they put up another one. It worked for a while, so much so that the local authorities didn't bother helping out farmers past that second fence with rabbit netting loans. Those caught between the two fences, however, still had a rough time dealing with rabbit trouble. Soon enough, rabbits spread even over fence number 2, and it was clear the solution didn't work. In some areas, even while the fences were being built, those sneaky bunnies found their way past them. To this day, the rabbit population still sometimes puts the Australian officials through rough times. The dingo fence may be the longest one, but it's not the weirdest. The aquarium fence in Turkey might take that prize. This 164-foot aquarium fence was built to make sure the expensive villa's ocean view would be visible from every one of its levels. These days, it gathers a lot of tourists from all over the world, eager to see the variety of fish it contains, and even the octopuses. Putting up a see-through structure wasn't hard. The real challenge was connecting the aqua fence to the Aegean Sea through a buried pipeline stretching across 13,000 feet of land. This ensures water constantly flows, keeping the aquarium clean and the fish happy. To make sure no one damages the delicate fence or steals any of the fish or two, the owner also invested in security. He installed a network of 17 cameras equipped with facial recognition. Visitors are free to look and take pictures, but step too close and you're likely to trigger alarms. Another one of those weird fences is New Zealand's bra fence. If you ever find yourself through central Otago, you might stumble upon a fence adorned with bras of all kinds of shapes, sizes, and patterns. Its story takes us back to 1999, when people in the area found 4 bras mysteriously hanging on the fence near Cardrona Valley Road. Some were a bit surprised, but then others started adding their bras to the decor. Some more bras appeared, and it became a must-see spot for tourists. Its popularity was so high that at times it caused traffic problems in the area. Australia feels like the safest place on Earth, geologically speaking. No megavolcanoes, no massive fault lines slicing cities in half, no constant earthquake alerts. It looks solid and unbreakable, but according to a brand new global stress map of Earth's crust, Australia is one of the most internally stressed pieces of land on the entire planet. It's not shaking or cracking yet, but it's quietly storing energy like a bent ruler about to snap. To understand why this is such a big deal, imagine Earth's crust like a giant jigsaw puzzle made of moving slabs called tectonic plates. These plates float on softer rock below and push, pull, or grind against each other. Where plates meet, earthquakes and volcanoes make sense. But stress doesn't just stay at the edges, it travels. It builds up inside plates too, like pressure spreading through frozen ice when you squeeze it. Scientists mapped over 100,000 real stress measurements, from oil wells, rock tests, and earthquakes, to see where Earth is being squeezed the hardest right now. When they laid all the data together, the map lit up like a warning sign, and Australia stood out. This shocked scientists because Australia sits far away from plate boundaries, which usually means stability. But instead of relaxing, the Australian continent gets squeezed from multiple directions by nearby plates, especially the Pacific and Eurasian ones. The stress doesn't release easily, so it piles up inside the crust, and then nothing moves. Until suddenly everything does. One of the strangest discoveries showed up in places like the Bowen Basin, where stress directions twist and rotate underground. That's bad news because unpredictable stress behaves like glass about to shatter. These rotating stress fields make it nearly impossible to say when or where cracks could form. It could be years away or tomorrow. And human activity makes it even riskier. Drilling deep into the crust for geothermal energy or injecting fluids underground can nudge these stressed zones just enough to trigger fault movement. This doesn't mean Australia is about to split in half next week, but it does mean the idea of geologically safe might be outdated. Scientists now think Australia could eventually fracture internally and form new fault systems where none existed before. What makes the new stress map different from older models is that it doesn't just explain past earthquakes, it helps identify future risk zones before anything breaks. Countries can use this data to decide where drilling is safer, where tunnels shouldn't go, and where infrastructure needs reinforcement. But even with all this data, we still can't predict the exact moment Earth will snap. Stress maps tell us where the tension is. They don't tell us when it gives up. But this idea of continents quietly tearing themselves apart isn't just theory. Africa gives us the clearest real-world example. It's slowly unzipping itself. So slowly that no human will ever wake up and see a new ocean where land used to be, but fast enough that scientists can actually measure it happening right now. Deep beneath East Africa, the ground stretches, thins, and pulls apart as if the continent is taking a deep breath and never fully exhaling. And over millions of years, that stretch could turn into an ocean. This whole process centers on something called the East African Rift System, or EARS for short. Think of it like a giant tear running through the continent, thousands of miles long, cutting through countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, and Mozambique. It's one of the biggest rift zones on Earth. A rift zone is exactly what it sounds like, a place where the planet's crust is being pulled apart instead of squeezed together. And Africa just happens to have one of the most dramatic examples anywhere on the planet. What's really happening is that Africa isn't one solid plate anymore. It's splitting into two massive chunks, the Nubian plate to the west and the Somalian plate to the east. These two plates are drifting away from each other at a speed that sounds laughable, just less than an inch per year. That's about the speed your fingernails grow. But give that process millions of years and suddenly continents don't look so permanent anymore. In 2018, photos of a giant split in Kenya went viral across the internet. Headlines screamed that Africa was splitting in half right now. It looked dramatic, but that moment didn't mean Africa suddenly broke overnight. That rupture was more like a surface ripple, a small local sign of a much bigger process that's been going on for around 25 million years. And if we could travel in time to 5 or 10 million years from now, we would probably see the crust thin enough for seawater to rush in. When or if that happens, East Africa would slowly peel away from the rest of the continent, and a brand new ocean basin would form between the two plates. Africa would lose its eastern shoulder, and maps of the world would need a serious update. As strange as that sounds, it's actually totally normal for Earth. The planet never stops reshaping itself. It just works on a timeline so slow that our brains struggle to process it. The continents we know today feel ancient and permanent, but they're basically temporary arrangements. About 138 million years ago, South America and Africa were locked together like puzzle pieces. You can still see it if you look at their coastlines. They match almost perfectly. East Africa drifting away will just be the next chapter in that story. Australia's story could follow a different path, but the physics are similar. Stress builds, rock resists, then the rock fails. And stress doesn't care about borders, cities, or how calm the surface looks. That's why scientists are so concerned about something called SH max, the direction of maximum horizontal stress. In simple terms, it tells us which way the Earth is squeezing the hardest underground. If that squeezing lines up with existing fractures, earthquakes become more likely. If it cuts across old faults, new ones can form. Turkey is another place where the stress map practically screams danger. The country sits where Arabian, Eurasian, and African tectonic plates collide. There's also a smaller Anatolian plate on which Turkey is located, and which gets squeezed westward like toothpaste, grinding against massive faults. The stress map shows SH max pointing in directions that load these faults perfectly. Now, researchers looked at ancient lava flows near one of Turkey's faults and realized they weren't random. Lava sheets once flowed smoothly across the land, cooled into solid rock, and then got pulled apart over time, like a snapped chocolate bar. That gave scientists a rare, clear snapshot of how continents deform from the inside out. To date the lava, the team used microscopic zircon crystals trapped inside it. These crystals work like natural stopwatches. They trap helium created by radioactive decay, and by measuring that helium, scientists can tell when the lava erupted and cooled. When they combine that with satellite images and remote sensing, the scientists managed to see Earth's slow-motion movements. The Tuzgolu Fault stretches more than 120 miles and is so massive that you can spot it from space. For years, scientists assumed it behaved like many of Turkey's dangerous faults, where land slides sideways past itself. But this new research flipped that idea on its head. The fault isn't sliding, it's slowly ripping open. The land on either side moves away from each other at less than an inch per year. That sounds tiny, but then again, over thousands or millions of years, that motion adds up to continents literally thinning and breaking. And since the fault sits where three massive tectonic plates meet, this matters way beyond Turkey. All this once again reminds us that continents don't just collide or slide. Sometimes they stretch until they snap. And places that look calm on the surface might already be under invisible strain, inch by inch, year after year, rewriting the map long before anyone feels the shake. Boom! A fiery rock the size of a skyscraper tore through Earth's atmosphere. It slammed into the ground with unimaginable force and sent shockwaves rippling through the continents. When the chaos finally settled, something strange glimmered on the ground. Shards of glass scattered across southern Australia. But these weren't ordinary shards from your chandelier. They were tektites. That's a fancy name for strange, glassy, pebble-like objects, which are like leftovers from a meteorite impact. Scientists had seen these before. The last batch they found came from a meteor strike that happened about 780,000 years ago, which is already mind-blowing. But this new discovery? Even crazier. These tiny glass pieces seem to be around 11 million years old. And here's the twist. Their chemical makeup didn't match any known impact site. They were totally different, like fingerprints from a stranger. That means they must have come from a completely separate asteroid strike. One so huge, it blasted debris all across the continent. Of course, scientists wanted to find the massive crater that caused all this, but it wasn't as easy as they soon realized. The asteroid might not have hit Australia itself. It could have crashed somewhere hidden, maybe deep under the thick rainforests of Southeast Asia, or beneath the rugged mountains of Papua New Guinea. Over millions of years, the Earth's surface shifted, eroded, and transformed, so it could have covered up the crater completely. Yep, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. All that remains today are these mysterious glassy clues, and wow, those tektites are mesmerizing. Some look like tiny drops frozen in midair. Others are stretched and sleek. Their black, shiny surfaces catch sunlight in a way that almost makes them look alive. But these little gems aren't just pretty. Inside them are traces of silicon, aluminum, and iron. It's all evidence of unimaginable heat, the kind that melts solid rock. I mean molten debris shooting through the air, cooling down into glass before it even hits the ground. That kind of heat. That's how powerful the impact was. The bang must have been enormous, and it spread glittering fragments across hundreds of miles like a cosmic version of confetti. Discoveries like this remind us that Earth has faced more massive asteroid strikes than we once believed. By studying what these tektites are made of, scientists can tell how big the asteroid was, how it hit, and what kind of chaos it caused back then. It's wild to think that the peaceful, sun-baked lands of southern Australia, now home to kangaroos and red dust, were once ground zero for a fiery cosmic impact. If you're waiting for a plot twist where the mystery was solved, I'm sorry. But even with all our fancy satellites and tech, scientists still haven't found the crater. It's like the asteroid hit, left these shiny breadcrumbs behind, and then disappeared without leaving a footprint. Southern Australia now holds these glass shards like a secret diary from millions of years ago, just waiting for humans to piece the story together. Until then, let's visit a couple of impact craters scientists have already pinned down. In the middle of Western Australia, in the ancient Pilbara region, geologists found what might be the oldest impact crater on Earth. It's probably about 2.7 billion years old. Yep, that's billion, with a B. At the time it formed, this gigantic crater would have stretched nearly 60 miles across. Of course, after sitting around for a few billion years, time and weather did their thing. The once sharp crater got worn down and reshaped until it became more like a dome than a bowl. What's left today is called the North Pole Dome, and we can still see about 20 miles of its raised center. To put things in perspective, our planet is around 4.5 billion years old, but most of what we know about meteor strikes comes from much younger rocks. You see, over billions of years, erosion, volcanoes, and plate tectonics have recycled and reshaped most of Earth's original surface. So, finding any piece of crust that old and still showing impact scars is like uncovering a fossil from the dawn of time. Between 4 and 2.5 billion years ago, Earth was totally different. It was completely covered in water, and maybe a few lonely bits of land sticking out. Volcanoes were erupting like crazy. Chemicals were swirling in the oceans, and continents were just starting to form. Most of that early crust got destroyed or buried long ago, so surviving pieces like this crater are unbelievably rare. Then, about 2 billion years ago, Earth went through a wild snowball Earth phase. Ice stretched from the North Pole all the way to the South Pole. But before that icy chapter, something dramatic had already happened in what's now Western Australia. A meteorite came crashing down. This idea fits perfectly with another theory scientists have, that billions of years ago, space rocks were going after the moon, and since the Earth is right next door, it probably took just as many hits. We just lost most of the evidence because our planet constantly reshapes itself. So, a research team went out to North Pole Dome to see what they could find, and after just 1 hour, they struck gold. They discovered something called shatter cones, delicate cone-shaped patterns that form only under the unimaginable pressure of a meteorite impact. You literally can't fake those. Using those shatter cones, the scientists dated the impact to around 3.47 billion years ago. And they think this crater might have been about the same size as the Chicxulub crater in Mexico, the one famous for wiping out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. That's how massive this ancient strike was. But that's not all. The team also found tiny droplets of molten rock that got blasted into the sky when the meteor hit, cooled down midair, and then rained back to Earth. Some of them even landed as far away as South Africa. Scientists are still studying this crater, so let's leave them to it and hop to our next destination, the North Sea, or more precisely, under it. There's been this mysterious dent in the Earth hiding under layers of rock for millions of years, about 80 miles off the coast of Yorkshire. The crater is almost 2 miles wide. Scientists first found it back in 2002, called it the Silver Pit Crater, and ever since, it's been the geological equivalent of a true crime mystery. Was it caused by an asteroid slamming into Earth, or was it something more boring, like shifting salt beds or an ancient volcano that just sneezed? For 20 years, experts argued about it. But now, after 2 decades of back and forth, researchers finally cracked the case, and the asteroid team wins. Turns out, something from outer space carved out Silver Pit more than 40 million years ago. A research team used super detailed 3D seismic imaging, which is basically Earth's version of an MRI, and they also took old drill cuttings from an oil well from the 1980s. When they put all the data together, they saw the signature shape of an impact crater. It has a raised middle, a ring of broken rock, and even little mini craters left by debris that flew back down after the hit. The cracks in the rocks were stretched apart on one side and squished on the other. It was proof that the asteroid came in at an angle, not a straight shot. Microscopic quartz grains from the drill samples sealed the deal. Under the microscope, they had these weird crisscrossed scars that only form under insane pressure. I don't envy anyone who gets hit by something moving at 9 miles per second, and that's exactly what happened to our planet. Scientists think the impact happened sometime between 43 and 46 million years ago. Back then, the world was warmer and the oceans teemed with life. So you can imagine the chaos it must have caused, though thankfully, no dinosaurs were around to worry about it. They'd been gone for 20 million years by then.
So a few years ago, in 2019, folks in Australia said they liked an old idea with a new twist, using extra floodwater from the north to help dry areas in the west and south. This plan got the name of the new Brandfield scheme. It was based on an old idea from the 1930s. The idea was to catch floodwater from the north and move it to the south and west. But the original plan never actually happened. Over the years, lots of experts said it wouldn't work. They thought it was too expensive and too tricky to build, even though it could potentially help fix drought problems in dry parts of Queensland. The original idea appeared a long time ago, when an engineer named John Brandfield got a big idea. He wanted to take floodwater from rivers in northern Queensland and send it inland to Lake Erie, one of the driest spots in Australia. He planned to use dams, pumps, really big pipes, and even tunnels to transport all that water over the Great Dividing Range, a big mountain range in Australia. The biggest dam would have been called Hell's Gate, and Brandfield wanted it twice as tall as what it was originally planned. This way, pumps and gravity could help move the water over the Great Dividing Range. The water would then flow south and help irrigate farmland near places like Hughenden. It would change the weather, make it rain more, and turn the dry land into green farms. Eventually, it would reach Lake Erie, turning the desert into a green growing area. That way, Australia could grow more food, sell it to other countries, and make more jobs. He hoped that the area could turn into a food bowl for the country. For some time, people talked about the plan a lot. They loved the idea. They thought it could change how farming worked. And some even believed that nature had already planned for the land to be filled with water. Dry rivers and lake beds were just waiting to be used. They even said that rains fell on the wrong side of the mountains, and Brandfield's plan could fix that. But when the authorities looked into this idea, they found big problems. And the main one was that the plan would cost too much. Plus, there weren't enough scientists or engineers to do a full investigation. The land was too dry and harsh. No one was sure it would even work, like how much water would really get there. Plus, some of Brandfield's measurements were wrong, especially the dam heights. So, in 1947, they officially shut the project down, claiming that even if they built the project, it wouldn't be worth it. After all, even places next to oceans, like parts of Chile, still stay bone dry, so a big lake might not result in more rain. And still, in 2019, one political party brought the idea back with an updated version called the new Brandfield scheme. They wanted to try it again, but with some changes to make it work better. Their plan included the following steps. Take water from the South Johnstone, Tully, Herbert, and Burdekin rivers. Store that water using a big dam called Hell's Gate Dam, but this time they wanted to make the dam twice as tall as in the original plan. Let the water flow through tunnels using gravity instead of using lots of pumps. Move the water under the mountains and into the Warrego River in southern Queensland. Use the water to grow crops in dry places south and west of Hughenden, a huge area even bigger than Tasmania, eventually turning it into a food bowl. At the same time, they didn't say how much the whole project would cost, but they promised to spend $20 million to let Australia's National Science Agency check if the plan could work. Those innovative ideas sounded good, but for over 80 years, loads of experts kept saying, "Nope, it won't work." Why? Branfield said his idea would cost £40 million back in 1941. That's about $3.2 billion today. But the new version of the plan might cost more than $15 billion and take over 10 years to build. Also, people who care about nature are worried. They explain that taking water away from where it usually goes could hurt animals and plants. It might let invasive plants and animals spread to new places. It might mess up rivers and oceans, where fish and other animals live. It could even hurt towns and businesses near the coast that depend on those natural water flows. Still, some people really believed in the idea and thought it was worth doing, especially to help farmers and fix drought problems. However, in 2022, the government decided to stop trying to fix the drought in Western Queensland with the Branfield scheme. Experts looked closely at the plan and said it just wouldn't work. The problem? There's not enough water all the time to make it happen. Apparently, the new cost of the plan would have been over $30 billion. That's a huge amount of money. You could buy yourself a fleet of private jets and luxurious yachts, and more. So experts said you'd need lots and lots of water to spend that kind of money, but the water just isn't there. Now, instead of one huge project, they suggested doing smaller water projects closer to where the rain and waterfalls are. These smaller projects, called mini Branfield grids, would be in 4 places along the Queensland coast. Those little grids could share water when some places had more or less rain. Other scientists looked at the plan too, and they agreed. Even if things went super well, the Branfield scheme would still cause problems and cost way too much, while the mini water grids project looks more plausible. They think the dry parts west of the mountains will do better without the full-scale Branfield scheme. There are easier and cheaper ways to help those places grow and get water. So the big plan was dropped, and now they're looking at smarter, smaller ideas to help with water and farming. And the matter is quite urgent. Australia is a super dry place, one of the driest places people actually live in. When there's a drought, there's not much water around. That means farms don't grow as much food, and that can cause a lot of problems. In the future, droughts are likely to happen more often and be worse. That's why it's necessary to start getting ready now. Experts are working on something called the Drought Resilience Mission, trying to figure out how to deal with droughts better in the future. One of them looked at how much droughts actually cost Australia. His research shows that droughts can hurt a lot of things – farms, jobs, towns, and even the whole country. When there's no rain for a really long time, some towns can actually run out of water. That's called day zero. It's when the taps in people's houses get turned off because there's just no water left. In 2020, a town in Queensland called Stanthorpe hit day zero. About 50 other towns were really close too. When such a situation happens, the only way to get water is by bringing it in with trucks, and that's super expensive. Stanthorpe had to get around 20 trucks of water every day for a year and a half. It cost them about $800,000 every month. In the end, they spent over $14 million just to have water. Luckily, it started raining again and filled the dams back up. But the authorities are working on ways to stop this kind of thing from happening again. They want to help towns be ready so they never run out of water like that. Because drought just doesn't mess with water, it can also mess with people's health. When everything dries up, plants vanish and the soil gets loose. Then the wind picks it up and makes huge dust storms. Those dust clouds can blow really far, even into such big cities as Sydney. That's what happened in 2018. The air got so bad that kids, older people, and anyone with breathing problems had to be extremely careful. The dust ruined some crops and made different foods, even fruit, unsafe to eat.
This is Australia. And here, A little to the south is its island part called Tasmania. It's a giant island with beautiful and rich nature, great weather, and delicious food. But for some reason, very few people live here. Something makes people leave this place. Something prevents people from moving here. And this something is… let's find out. So, the population of Tasmania is over 500,000 people. That's not a lot. In fact, Tasmania is Australia's smallest state by population, but it's the 26th largest island in the world. Its area is about the size of Ireland or Switzerland. In other states, the area is much smaller, and there are quite a lot of people. For example, over 8 million residents live in New South Wales, more than 7 million in Victoria, and over 5 million in Queensland. Also, mainland Australia is much more likely to endure fires and scorching sun. Tasmania has a fairly cool climate and amazing nature. So, what's the reason? Why do so few people live here? Let's visit the southeastern part of Tasmania, where the Tasman Peninsula is located. If you look at the map, you'll see that there's the Tasman Sea connected to the boundless Pacific Ocean. So it looks like the Port Arthur we're going to visit is on the edge of the world. In the past, there was Tasmania's official prison here that opened in 1830. Prisoners served their sentences and worked at a logging station. It was hard work, and many could not survive it. It's scary to imagine what happened inside the walls of this prison and how many people stayed there forever. But think for yourself. The Tasman Peninsula is on the edge of the world. There's almost nothing here except wild nature. Prisoners arrived there on ships and spent long hours doing hard work. There was no air conditioning or a soft bed. There was no hope of getting out of there. Some guards treated them cruelly. They were starving. Some got bitten by venomous snakes. There was nowhere to escape. The prison closed in 1877, but even today, it still inspires horror among tourists. Not only because of its appearance and history, but also because of the strange phenomena that occur there. According to rumors and legends, the spirits of prisoners roam the territory of Port Arthur. And on Monday morning, you can hear bells ring in an old ruined church building. But the thing is, the bells haven't been there for a long time. Of course, those are all rumors, and there are no confirmed facts. But you might feel uncomfortable in this place because of its sinister past and creepy atmosphere. Port Arthur is one of the most mysterious places in Tasmania, but there's something worse. Welcome to Franklin House. It's a large estate with gardens and a huge building. There's a chance that as soon as you cross the threshold of this house, you will want to leave immediately. There are a lot of antiques here, but there's also something elusive and sinister in the air. This house was built by a former convict. 4 years after the construction, he leased the mansion to a schoolteacher who turned it into an academy for boys. It's not known what happened in the walls of this building in the past, but today, according to rumors, mysterious phenomena take place here. Objects move by themselves. Eerie noises come from empty rooms, and shadows of human figures are spotted in halls. Plus, according to a non-profit company that researches mysterious phenomena, there's an increased level of electromagnetic activity in this house. What does it mean? Nature? Weather? Or phantoms? Choose for yourself what to believe in. Okay, there are 2 creepy places in Tasmania, but the reason why people leave this place is different. We're getting closer and closer to it. Hobart is the capital of Tasmania, and there's an old prison here, where people still run tours. Tourists come here to tickle their nerves, because the most terrible sentences were carried out here. There are rumors about strange smells, flickering shadows, and a creepy atmosphere that make this place scary. Yes, if you're a tourist and come here for fun, you will get an interesting experience. But if you're a local and live nearby, then maybe it might bother you. But of course, an abandoned old prison wouldn't discourage people from living on a giant, picturesque island. There's a bigger reason. There's a city in Tasmania called Richmond. According to local legends, once upon a time, George Grover lived here. He was a security guard who kept order during the construction of the Richmond Bridge. which was built by convicts. George Grover was an evil man who treated prisoners cruelly. One day, the prisoners decided to take revenge on him and pushed him off the bridge. Since then, rumors have been circulating that the spirit of George Grover is walking under the bridge with his big black and white dog, which is called Grover's dog. Tourists and locals reported they had seen this evil security guard at night. He didn't harm them, but gave a severe fright. Many terrible events related to escaped prisoners also took place on the island. So judging by the history of Tasmania, there's been a lot of pain and misery here. Perhaps this affects the overall energy of the island. But is this the reason why so few people come to live here? Now we'll finally learn the most terrifying explanation. Are you ready? Please get away from the screens if you're faint of heart. There's almost no internet connection in some parts of the island. Boo! The signal is very weak and unreliable, which makes it impossible for people to work remotely and watch our videos. Besides, Tasmania is separated from Australia by the Bass Strait, which creates logistical difficulties for trade and traveling. Today in 2025, would you agree to live on a huge island with bad internet? You will also have to pay more and wait longer for the delivery of any goods. One of the main sources of income is tourism. In addition, rental prices are rising here, especially in central cities. Because of logistical difficulties, prices for food and necessities are rising here. One of the biggest problems is waiting lists in public hospitals in Tasmania. People who need modern medical care have to wait a long time for their turn, or they gotta spend tons of money to get to the mainland. Tasmania is getting old. More and more young people are leaving this place. There are no major corporate headquarters on the island. There are no large enterprises here like in Sydney and Melbourne, which means there are few career opportunities. Low salaries and unemployment are forcing young people to move to the mainland. The falling standard of living creates serious demographic problems. On the one hand, this is bad. The fewer people there are, the more difficult it is to raise the economy, to run agriculture, and somehow improve this region. But on the other hand, it's good for nature. About 24% of Tasmania's land area is a World Heritage Site. This territory is one of the last in the world to have cool rainforests. It's also home to one of the richest archaeological sites in Australia. Scientists found evidence that people lived here at least 20,000 years ago. Of course, these factors are not as creepy as the stories about haunted houses, but they can scare you away from moving to Tasmania. The idea that you live almost on the edge of the world, surrounded by the endless waters of the ocean, can be scary. You can meet unique animals that don't live anywhere else in the world and see incredible trees. For example, the centurion tree, which is eucalyptus, is one of the tallest and oldest trees in the world. Its height is about 330 feet, and its age is about 400 years. The nature of Tasmania is incredibly beautiful. There's so much peace and calm here. In a sense, it's a paradise. But let's be honest, would you agree to live here considering all the nuances? Let's hope that people will find ways to improve the economy and raise the standard of living so young people won't leave this region. Northern Australia is basically the perfect spot. It's right next to some of the world's busiest trade routes that move trillions of dollars worth of goods every year. With all that action going on, you'd naturally think this massive coastline would be packed with skyscrapers, shopping malls, and sprawling suburbs. But instead, the whole region is practically empty. So why is that? Okay, before you rush to the comments and type, "That's not true," let's clear one thing up. Yes, there are some important cities up north, places like Darwin, with around 150,000 people, or Townsville, which has about 200,000. But let's be real, it's a bit of a stretch to call them major cities. Large metropolitan areas are generally considered places with a population of 1.5 million people or more, like Sydney, Melbourne, or Perth. Now take a look at them. Can you see what all those cities have in common? Yep, they're located in the southern part of the country. The thing is, Australia is massive, stretching across a little under 3 million square miles, making up about 5% of the world's total land area. To put that into perspective, you could fit almost 60 Englands inside Australia's borders. But it's also one of the most sparsely populated countries on Earth. See these red zones here? That's where the majority of people live. This means that the center of Australia is, well, practically empty. That's basically because this area has an intense climate covered with semi-arid and desert regions. It's really dry most of the time and hardly gets any rain, so they end up facing big challenges when it comes to having enough water. During summer days, average temperatures are typically between 98 and 102 degrees Fahrenheit, and suddenly, living by the beach starts to sound a whole lot more appealing. Looking for more bearable temperatures is one of the reasons why most Australians are concentrated along the coastlines. Great, but think about it. Australia is totally surrounded by ocean waters. Yet, for some reason, people choose the southern coastlines, not the north. And that doesn't make much sense. Take a closer look at Darwin, and you'll see that it's actually closer to Indonesia than it is to Australia's own capital. We're talking about the world's fourth most populous nation with one of the fastest growing economies. Indonesia has a ton of positive ingredients behind that growth. It's rich in mineral reserves, has a large working age population, and is becoming strong in sectors like manufacturing, trade, and digital services. Put all that in a blender, and Indonesia's economy is expected to grow at an average annual rate of 4.8% over the next 2 years. In fact, experts believe that Indonesia, and Southeast Asia in general, will be some of the most important countries for Australia over the next 100 years, financially speaking. So that brings us back to the question: why hasn't the northern part of the country turned into a booming metropolis, soaking up the benefits of its prime spot near Asia? Well, there are a couple reasons for that. First up, the weather. The top of Australia has a tropical climate, and that means two things: it's hot and humid. During the wet season, it rains a lot, and I mean a lot. The region suddenly gets hit by big, intense storms. And yeah, thunderstorms can put on a heck of a visual show, but the situation can also get pretty tense. Because when it rains that much, it also floods, sometimes badly. And that can lead to roads being closed and towns getting completely cut off. As a result, producers have a hard time distributing their goods, and stores sometimes end up with empty shelves. It's like a domino effect. The afternoons feel super sticky, with the air so humid it feels like you're walking around wrapped in a warm, wet blanket. During the wet season, the humidity often stays above 70%. But sweat isn't the only problem. The real issue is that all the heat and dampness cause infrastructure to wear out a lot faster. The wet season also means it's a tropical cyclone season. Cyclones can stick around for days or even weeks and often follow messy, unpredictable paths. They're dangerous and bring all kinds of hazards, like extreme winds, heavy rainfall, and storm surges. Then, a few months later, comes the dry season. Humidity takes a break, and there's very little rain. But that means the same wetlands dry up and vanish under the scorching sun, leaving cracked earth behind. That leads to dust, fire risks, and water shortages. This kind of wild weather might work out fine for small towns or a few businesses, but it's a real problem if you want to develop a big city. Major cities need reliable infrastructure and steady access to water and energy, and the North doesn't provide any of that easily. Maintaining a modern city up there would cost a fortune, without a big local population to help pay for it. Mining companies do operate in the North, extracting minerals, gas, and other resources. But they don't build cities, they build temporary towns. Workers fly in for a few weeks, then fly back home. There is money in the North, but it doesn't translate into busy centers. Alright, so here's the second reason why there aren't any big cities up north. The place is super remote. Sure, it is closer to Asia, but that's a whole other continent. When it comes to Australia's own big cities like Sydney or Melbourne, It's really far away. The problem is that the North has always been lacking good roads and railways, and that's related to how things played out in Australia's history. Some would say it's kind of a too little too late situation. Because, you see, back when Britain first settled Australia in 1788, they made practical choices. Over the years, settlers picked spots with safe harbors, manageable weather, and fertile soil. All things the northern coast just didn't have. Early attempts to build towns up north, like Port Essington and Fort Wellington, failed spectacularly because of disease, isolation, and harsh conditions. Only Darwin managed to survive, but like I mentioned earlier, it never grew into a major city. But none of this means the region was empty before Europeans arrived. And that brings us to reason number 3, protected areas. The North has long been home to diverse Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, groups who were living there thousands of years before Britain showed up. Over the years, many areas have stayed under traditional ownership or have remained really significant and important to Indigenous communities. Even today, big parts of Northern Australia are Indigenous lands, national parks, or conservation zones. These lands are protected by law, so developing these areas means navigating complex legal agreements and risking damage to places of enormous cultural and spiritual significance. In other words, it's not exactly easy to just come in and say, "Hey, let's build a big metropolis right here." But it's not like the idea hasn't crossed people's minds. Experts have come up with plans every now and then to open up the North. Many of those plans have ended up failing, mostly because of all the reasons I've already talked about in this video. Even in 2025, the North's remoteness is still a problem, but that doesn't mean it can't be developed. And right now, there's fresh buzz around that old dream, with the Northern Australia Action Plan working to crack the code. Authorities are pouring billions into roads, ports, and infrastructure, hoping to spark industries like clean energy, minerals, and agriculture, all while working closely with Indigenous communities who call the North home. It's a bold vision, sure, but it just might finally turn this vast, wild region into a thriving frontier. For now, though, we just have to accept that the North remains mostly wild, full of intense storms, breathtaking landscapes, and unique animals you can't find anywhere else.
Ooh, from giant spiders to venomous snakes, we all get freaked out by Australian creatures. Yeah, me too. But newly discovered fossils show that things were way more dangerous 120 million years ago, when this land was completely ruled by massive razor-clawed megaraptors. Yeah, I'm glad I wasn't around then. These dinosaurs were about 26 feet long and walked on 2 legs, just like the famous T-Rex. They were fast, fierce hunters, with a superpower: their hug. Yep, their massive, muscular forearms had huge curved claws, perfect for grabbing and holding onto prey. Uh-oh. They would wrap their arms around their poor victims, just like a hug, and trap them with no chance of escape. And even though their teeth were quite small, they were still sharp enough to rip through flesh. The first time we heard about megaraptors was in the late 90s, when a paleontologist discovered their fossils in the region of Patagonia, Argentina. Since then, no one has ever found a complete skeleton, only fragments. But probably the most important one yet was uncovered in Australia at the beginning of this year. Researchers were exploring Victoria's stunning coastline when they stumbled upon megaraptor fossils. First, they spotted bones from its lower legs and a few vertebrae washed up on the beach. Even though they were working with just a couple of fragments, a deeper analysis confirmed that these belonged to a megaraptor. And not just any megaraptor, it was the oldest one ever discovered. This discovery gets even more exciting because it adds weight to the theory that these dinosaurs might have originated in Australia. But we already knew that they roamed the land down under since early 2023, when researchers found the top of a megaraptor skull in the country. So let's rewind a bit. We first found their remains in Argentina, right? Right. But then, years later, researchers found fossils of the same family of dinosaurs on the other side of the world, in Australia. If the ones in Oceania were older, how did these creatures end up in South America? Of course, they didn't fly there. They didn't cross continents by swimming either, although there is a theory that they could swim. Remember, we're talking about the dinosaur era, which happened millions of years ago. And back then, Australia and Argentina were actually pretty close. Basically, they were one. Both lands were part of the supercontinent known as Gondwana, and they were connected through Antarctica. Wait, but wasn't this path freezing? I mean, yeah, these dinos had to pass through Antarctica to get to their destination, but they weren't freezing their tails off. This all happened during the mid-Cretaceous period, when the weather was super warm. Back then, the poles were covered in plants, not ice. So let's just say they took full advantage of the good weather to make the crossing. Now, about 180 million years ago, Gondwana started to break apart. At some point, Australia drifted away from the supercontinent, cutting it off from other landmasses, including South America. That's why the same dinosaurs showed up in completely different parts of the world. Mystery solved. Now, let's get back to that recent discovery. The researchers didn't just find a few traces of megaraptors on the beach. In total, they uncovered 250 dinosaur bones at the site, but only 5 of them were really important. They belong to 3 different species of dinosaurs that, as it turns out, all lived in Victoria at the same time. So yeah, we've already talked about those first 2 bones. They were from the megaraptor. Next, we have a shin bone from a Onenlagiine. That's my best shot at pronouncing it. It's a dino also known as the southern raptor. This is a type of dromaeosaur with a long snout. And the last 2 shin bones of different sizes came from a Carcharodontosaurus, whose name means shark-toothed lizard. This one is a particularly big deal for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's the first evidence that this species lived in Australia. And number 2, it was small, and that is pretty surprising since we've always thought of this species as being massive. Fossils found in Argentina, for example, show this dinosaur reached a length of about 36 feet. But the one in Australia was much smaller, measuring only around 6 to 10 feet long. And that's still plenty big. Basically, what we're saying is that the way predators were ranked in these 2 parts of the world was completely different. In South America, Carcharodontosaurs grew to massive T-Rex-sized giants, towering over megaraptors and dominating the landscape. But in Australia, it was the complete opposite. There, huge, powerful megaraptorids roamed the land alongside smaller Carcharodontosaurs. So the predator dynamic was different. And all of this just shows how unique the ecosystem in Victoria was back then. Although isolated dinosaur bones have been found in Western and South Australia, most of the fossils come from the eastern part of the country, like Queensland. And there, researchers dug up something really, really rare: a well-preserved dinosaur skull. The study shows that this bone belonged to the 4th discovered specimen of Titanosaur. This group includes those massive long-necked dinosaurs. They look like the Brachiosaurus, but some of them were even bigger, reaching 120 feet long. The skull, discovered in 2018, belongs to this guy, whose pronunciation is above my pay grade, and the research points out that it roamed the Earth around 98 million years ago. Thanks to this find, scientists were able to recreate, for the very first time, what its face might have looked like. Probably after checking out the illustration, they thought, hey, it looks a lot like its cousin. They were talking about another species of Titanosaur, this other unpronounceable guy. And guess where they used to live? Yep, in Argentina. So, this research also supports the theory that dinosaurs crossed between South America and Australia during the mid-Cretaceous period. Now, this wasn't the only secret buried in Queensland, though. In 2024, researchers working there discovered the fossilized remains of a new species of pterosaur, about 100 million years old. These creatures were the first vertebrates that could actually fly, existing alongside dinosaurs. They were massive, powerful predators, with wingspans of up to 36 feet. But these remains belong to a new species within the pterosaur group, which they have named Hakuna Matata, or something similar. Compared to their cousins, they were on the smaller side, with a wingspan of about 15 feet. Still, that's bigger than a snowy albatross, the largest flying bird we have today. This species of pterosaurs were terrifying beasts, flying over the ocean to hunt for prey. Once they spotted their victim, they'd snap open their 60-centimeter jaws, filled with sharp spike-like teeth, and, well, I guess there was no escaping that. The last incredible discovery we're talking about today also comes from Queensland. For over 20 years, students walked past a plain-looking rock at Biloela State High School completely unaware that it held 66 dinosaur footprints, and they date back about 200 million years. These prints were made by a group of these Latin-named guys. They were small dinosaurs with 3 toes on each foot, and it seems like they were all over Queensland around that early Jurassic period. The rock they found at the school worked like a snapshot, giving us a better idea of what these dinosaurs were like and how they behaved. After taking a closer look, researchers found that the footprints came from 47 individual dinosaurs. This group was probably walking along or maybe crossing a waterway when their footprints got marked in the white clay. And the study also discovered that they were likely moving at less than 4 miles per hour at the time. So we only discovered those marks in Australia. But fossils of the same species found in other countries showed that they had these long legs, a big chunky body, short arms, and this tiny head with a beak. But honestly, they don't sound as scary when you realize they only ate plants. Whew. Australia used to have its own giants. Those were huge animals that could have dwarfed anything living on this continent these days. Scientists found the remains of many of those ancient creatures in the Narracuta Caves in South Australia, 4 hours away from Adelaide. It's a lovely region, but it can be treacherous. Watch out for holes the ground is pocked with. Known as pitfall traps, many of them are no wider than a coffee table. They're deep and plunge into the darkest of caverns. One of such caverns is called Victoria Fossil Cave, and it's a treasury that's been hiding the bones of around 45,000 animals for centuries. Some of the oldest bones belong to creatures far more terrifying than any animal you can encounter today. Those were the ancient Australian megafauna, huge beasts that roamed the continent during the Pleistocene epoch. During those, there were giant snakes, huge flightless birds, wombat-like creatures the size of a rhinoceros, and many others. One of the largest examples of the Australian megafauna scientists have discovered so far is the Diprotodon. That giant herbivorous creature was 10 feet long and 6.5 feet tall, and weighed more than 6,000 pounds, about as much as a small Asian elephant. Even though this terrifying beast didn't eat meat, it could have smashed other animals with its sheer weight. Scientists have found the remains of hundreds of such creatures all over Australia, so it's safe to say that no other animal from that time or in that location was larger than this giant. Despite its creepy appearance, the Diprotodon was a relative to the modern-day wombat, and those are known to sometimes pounce humans. The Diprotodon had toes that pointed inward and were well suited for digging burrows. On the other hand, Diprotodon was a giant, and it was unlikely that it used to do so. It was likely a trait it had inherited from its smaller burrowing ancestors, or it could have used its claws to search for roots. This theory is supported by the fact that the animal's pouch was facing backward. It prevented any dirt from collecting inside while the creature was digging. Since this animal was so big, it didn't have to worry much about predators. Up until 60,000 years ago, when the first humans appeared on the continent, full-grown Diprotodons only had to look out for creatures like the quincana. Measuring in at a whopping 20 feet long, the quincana was a land crocodile. It lived in Australia from around 20 million to 40,000 years ago. It disappeared along with most other mega creatures of the last ice age. It's thought to be the result of the first humans coming to the continent. Even though the quincana was extremely fast and dangerous, it was possible that this creature got outcompeted by human hunters who took all available prey. Unlike modern crocodiles that are mainly aquatic, that mighty beast was a land dweller. Scientists figured it out by studying the quincana's legs. They were able to support and carry the body clear off the ground. It means there was no escape for ancient people once the quincana spotted them. Modern crocodiles can only push themselves along on their bellies. Such an adaptation allowed the quincana to chase its prey for long periods of time. exhausting it in the process. Another creepy feature of this ancient monster was its teeth. Aquatic crocs have conical teeth. Those are great for gripping and holding on to prey underwater. But Quincana had knife-like teeth, ideal for slicing soft-bodied animals like, mammals. Another Australian monster, Thylacoleo, wasn't all that large, but it didn't make it any less terrifying. It was still among the top predators and the biggest carnivorous animals in Australia. This creature was a true oddity of nature, even by prehistoric standards. First, its teeth resembled not those of a regular predator, but those of a rodent. Its front incisors were enlarged, taking the place of canines. Premolars were also shaped like blades. They were used for cutting flesh and bone. At first, scientists thought that Thylacoleo used those teeth to eat nuts and fruits. But later, a study showed that the use of such teeth was better suited on necks and spines. The jaws of this ancient creature were immensely powerful. A 220-pound Thylacoleo had a bite force similar to that of a present-day 550-pound lion. It means that the animal could easily bring down prey much larger than itself. Then there was Thylacoleo's tail. It had strong muscles which provided the animal with the ability to use the tail as support when tackling large prey. The Thylacoleo had retractable claws, and this feature is very uncommon among marsupials. It allowed the animal to keep its razor-sharp hooks from getting blunt and could help it get a better grip on its prey. Scientists are quite sure that, like today's leopards, the Thylacoleo could climb trees and jump on other animals from above. It was done so fast and stealthily, they never knew what hit them. The creature's rear feet support this theory. The first toe there was reduced, but the foot had a rough pad like what modern-day possums have. It allowed them to have a better grip while climbing. Right after scientists found the first skull of the Meliolania, this animal was classified as a lizard. That's why its name translates to small groomer. But after they discovered more complete fossils, it turned out that the Meliolania was a giant turtle. But that's not all. It was one of the largest land turtles to ever have existed. The main reason researchers initially believed the creature to be a lizard was the fact that its skull was adorned with a series of spikes. It's something the modern-day horned lizard can boast. But even after discovering the true nature of the Meliolania, scientists still don't know how to properly catalog it. It might have been a creature that folded its neck under its spine, or it could have folded it to the side. Beside those defensive mechanisms on its head, the Meliolania was also equipped with a spiked tail, which was probably used to prevent predators from attacking the animal from behind. Most species of the Meliolania disappeared around 2,000 to 3,000 years ago because of humans who hunted them to extinction in both Australia and on the surrounding islands. It took around 2 centuries for these turtles to go extinct in that region of the globe. The Megalania was a giant Australian lizard that existed at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. It looked like a Komodo dragon and the Australian monitor lizard, which are both believed to be Megalania's closest living relatives. Fossils tell us that the ancient animal was anywhere from 15 to 26 feet in length. Ow! The youngest fossil remains of this ancient Australian monitor lizard date back to about 50,000 years ago. The first indigenous settlers must have encountered Megalania, which led to the lizard's extinction. Originally, scientists thought that the Megalania was the only member of the genus Megalania, but these days it belongs to the genus Varanus, which means that the prehistoric creature is closely related to other Australian monitor lizards. Our next giant creature on our list was once dubbed an ostrich on steroids. I mean, look at it. It was the last of the thunderbirds to go extinct in Australia. The Genyorus lived on the continent at the same time as early humans. They might have coexisted for 15,000 years or so before the huge bird eventually disappeared. This theory has some proof. The bird's fossils found along with human artifacts. Some cave paintings also depict flightless birds similar to the Genyorus in size and shape. Although it wasn't the largest bird in Australia, the goose-like creature was still as tall as a grown-up man and weighed around 550 pounds. Even a modern-day ostrich can be dangerous if it feels threatened. Imagine meeting its giant prehistoric relative. Scientists are still arguing about its diet. Many believe the creature was an herbivore, but there's still a chance that the Genyornis was a partial scavenger. Its small, stubby wings and powerful hoof-like legs hint that the bird could have been a plant eater. But its huge beak and exceptionally deep lower jaw evoke suspicion. Such features are highly unusual in birds. A mega drought might hit Australia soon, and this isn't just about a couple of dry seasons. We're talking about 20 years of little or no rain. While Australia could be facing the longest and most devastating drought since official records began, the rest of the world might struggle to buy bread, flour, or cereals. Energy prices are likely to spike globally, and neighboring countries like New Zealand, Indonesia, and Malaysia must be prepared to receive Australians directly affected by the lack of water. To truly understand how severe this situation could become, we should first examine past disasters. First off, Australia is no stranger to droughts, and this phenomenon can happen across their entire territory. From 2017 to 2019, the southeast part of the country went through what they call the tinderbox drought. This was a severe bone-dry event where the cooler months saw only about half the usual rainfall. Parts of Australia became so dry that wildfires were a constant threat. Crops failed, and water was scarce. This drought was also thought to have contributed to the Black Summer fire disaster. By the end of 2019, bushfires were raging across the country on a scale never seen before, with people describing them as rivers of lava flowing down from treetops. The losses were staggering. The tourist industry alone took a hit of $2.8 billion, and over 7,000 jobs disappeared as a result of this difficult period. The tinderbox drought was a big reminder of what Australia might face in the future. That's why it's so important to understand what happened in the past to get a full picture of a possible 20-year mega drought. But there is one problem. Even though droughts are relatively common in Australia, the rainfall data available until today isn't enough for researchers to predict the future, and our records only go back to around 1900. So experts decided to study tree rings to uncover missing environmental data. If you look at a tree stump, you'll notice concentric rings on its surface. As trees grow, they form new rings, and the thickness of these rings depends on how much water they get. During a megadrought, the rings appear thinner because the trees don't have much water. Unfortunately, these natural records usually only go back a few hundred years, and it only tells us about specific local conditions, not the situation across all of Australia. So, experts turn to computer models to simulate how Earth's climate changed from the year 850 to 2000. This approach helped them to paint a picture of when megadroughts might have occurred in Australia and how to predict what might happen in the future. But what they were really interested in was whether the human factor might be making this scenario worse over the years and if we are somehow intensifying these dry periods. So, are we to blame for these megadroughts? The short answer is, we're not sure yet. On one hand, dry periods in Australia do seem to last longer than they did before factories and machines became common. On the other hand, they don't seem to be getting more intense or happening more often than before industrial times. This means a drought lasting 20 years might not be directly linked to human activities. Actually, this kind of phenomenon is just a normal part of how rainfall changes in Australia over time. This is backed up by evidence from ice cores, which suggests that a 39-year drought hit eastern Australia around 800 years ago. What makes it all so fascinating is that there isn't just one cause for this phenomenon. I mean, there is no single mechanism that explains all cases of megadroughts. It happens because the right combination of ocean and atmospheric conditions come together, and you end up with a drought. And just by random chance, you might have periods where there are 100-year-long droughts. Despite what many people think, megadroughts are not geographically isolated. They have occurred on every continent except Antarctica over the past 2,000 years, and are often linked to natural events. For instance, megadroughts in North America and Southwest South America were driven by El Niño, where the Pacific Ocean near the equator gets warmer than usual, disturbing normal weather patterns. They are not rare events either. In fact, the U.S. Southwest has been experiencing a mega drought since 2000. It's being considered the driest period in 1,200 years for the region. Major reservoirs like Lake Mead and Lake Powell are at low levels. Heat waves are hitting cities like Phoenix and Las Vegas harder than ever. And wildfires are happening more frequently as the land gets drier. Now, let's think about the future. Even though we have a very recent and concrete example from the U.S., research can't exactly predict how a 20-year megadrought would play out in Australia. Usually, such events show up mainly as reduced rainfall and snowfall. But in most areas, the increase in drought risk will be caused by a warmer, more arid atmosphere. So the ground will probably look parched and cracked, rivers and lakes will likely shrink, and the sky will be relentlessly clear and blue, with barely a cloud in sight. Farmers might struggle to grow crops, making grocery prices rise worldwide. Things like bread, flour, and cereals may become scarcer, as Australia supplies about 13% of global wheat exports. Coal mines might be affected, as they depend on water for extraction, washing, and processing. That might drive up power costs for industries around the world, which could be passed on to consumers, impacting global growth and inflation. As cities might face water shortages, Australians will likely find new ways to conserve every drop or maybe move to New Zealand or Southeast Asia. Now, you're probably thinking, when is this big event going to happen? Honestly, it's really hard to predict exactly. Megadroughts can happen every 150 to 1,000 years, but experts think Australia should be ready for one to happen in the next 10 years or so. And this possibly should be taken seriously. This phenomenon has been known to contribute to the collapse of entire civilizations. Take the Akkadians of Mesopotamia, who built the world's first empire more than 4,000 years ago. Studies of moisture at the ruins of Akkadian cities suggest that they experienced a massive drought lasting 300 years, and this may have led to their collapse. A similar thing happened to the Assyrian Empire, which existed over 2,700 years ago, in what is now northern Iraq. For years, it was a real mystery why they left their capital of Nineveh and never returned. But recent studies of a stalagmite in the Cunaba cave revealed that the rise and fall of the empire coincided with a wet period followed by a 125-year-long mega-drought. Because they were very dependent on seasonal rain for agriculture, this dry period made their life much harder. Even though experts now believe they probably left because of the dryness, the question of where they went is still a mystery. So, yep, mega-droughts may have played a role in the collapse of great civilizations in the past. But on the positive side, we've come a long way since then, and recent climate technologies can help us prepare for events like this. Now that we know a 20-year mega-drought is very much possible and might happen soon, Australia has some time to get ready for it. Developing strong water management plans to mitigate the severe impacts of a mega-drought is more than necessary, and it's also important to create community support networks to provide emotional and financial support to people, particularly farmers, who are more affected directly by this event. If initiatives like these emerge in the coming years, those 20 years of drought could be less intense than most people might expect.
It's June of 1857. A fierce storm slams into Geechin Bay, Australia, and rips apart a Dutch ship weighing 800 tons. Part of the crew tries to escape in a small boat, but only 9 of the 25 men on board survive. Now, many years later, researchers believe they've found this long-lost gold rush shipwreck. Yep, this ship is tied to one of the most dramatic high-stakes chapters in Australia's history. We're talking about the shipwreck of Koning Willem de Tweede, a vessel built back in 1840. This historic ship discovery is a big deal since it's now considered a real treasure in the world of underwater archaeology in Australia. Let me tell you why. By the middle of the 19th century, Dutch ships were carrying not just goods, but also people from Asia who were hoping to start a new life in Australia. And they were all chasing one thing: gold. Yep, the precious metal was discovered in Australia in 1851. Well, officially at least. It was actually found a few years earlier, but let's just say the authorities decided to keep that little detail away from the newspapers. Anyway, the big public discovery happened in 1851 when an Australian gold prospector named Edward Hammond Hargraves led an expedition in the New South Wales region, and he chose to tell everyone about his find. And just like that, the gold rush began. News spreads fast, so people start arriving from everywhere: Britain, Ireland, Germany, the Netherlands, and also from China. It's estimated by that time around 20,000 Chinese had made their way to the goldfields in Victoria. By 1861, about 3% of the Australian population had been born in the Asian country. Most of them came from the southern region of Guangdong, which was going through a really tough time back then. They'd been through it all: foreign invasions, massive floods, serious food shortages, you name it. Many people had lost everything. Their money was gone, their homes destroyed. They couldn't even afford a bite to eat. There was no clear way out of the poverty they were stuck in. But then, word started to spread. There was a goldfield somewhere in a distant British territory. They heard stories from people all over the world going there, that it was peaceful, full of opportunity, and that the land itself had everything you could need. It sounded like a dream. Before long, they began calling it Xinjin Shan, or New Gold Mountain. So, many scraped together what little they had left to reach Australia and start over. It was a shot at a better life, a chance to lift entire families out of poverty. But getting there wasn't cheap or easy. They had to travel in huge ships, and the average trip from Guangdong province took about 3 months to reach Sydney or Melbourne. At some point, Australian authorities decided to impose a tax on Chinese arrivals. Every passenger who disembarked at Victorian ports had to pay a 10-pound poll tax. So what do you think happened? The routes changed, of course. Instead of docking directly in Victoria, ships began stopping in Robe, a town in the southeastern part of South Australia. From there, people would walk about 250 miles all the way to the goldfields, just to avoid paying the tax. And this area is exactly where the Koning Willem de Tweede was discovered. Yep, our Dutch ship was found off the Robe coast, and it was one of many vessels that carried Chinese passengers to Australia. Now you can see why it's historically important, right? On the 16th of June, 1857, it brought around 400 people safely to shore so they could start their lives over. The ship itself didn't get a happy ending, though. After dropping them off, it was supposed to continue its journey, but then a storm rolled in. So, the ship had to drop anchor and wait it out in Geechin Bay. The weather kept getting worse. The anchor began to drag, and by the 13th of June, it was completely lost. The captain, called Hendrik Geisen, had to act fast. He made the call to beach the ship in hopes of saving both the vessel and his crew. But there was a problem. The ship ran aground on Long Beach, about 3 miles east of Robe, and it started breaking apart quickly in the rough seas. The rest of the story is tragic. 16 sailors drowned when one of the ship's small boats turned upside down. Only 9 men made it out alive. Captain Geisen stayed aboard the wreck. He eventually reached the shore by clinging to a cask. Thankfully, people who were on the beach managed to pull him out of the sea using a rope. A few months later, things from the wreck were sold to a local man in Robe named Jacob Chambers for £225, which was a pretty big amount of money back then. And that's because people were able to save a good amount of stuff from the wreck, like the bell, some doors, and wooden planks from the hull. Those doors and some of the timbers were later used to build the Caledonian Inn, a historic 2-story stone hotel that went up in 1859. As for the bell, it was supposedly used at Robe Primary School for over 100 years, but researchers aren't so sure about that part. What we do know is that most of the ship's remains were still missing, until now. After 3 years of hard work, a team affiliated with the Australian National Maritime Museum believes they have finally found the Koning Willem de Tweede. The project kicked off in April of 2022, and its main goal has been to search for, locate, and carry out an archaeological survey of the shipwreck's remains. To do that, they mainly used two tools: underwater metal detectors and a marine magnetometer, a device that detects changes in the magnetic field of the seafloor. Soon, this technology started picking up a bunch of anomalies in the area where the shipwreck was believed to be. And by anomalies, I mean weird signals. Clues that something might be buried under the seabed, probably hidden under layers of sand or mud. They believe those signals were coming from the iron parts of the ship's windlass. That's a big winch at the front of the ship used to pull up the anchors. Some of those pieces were sticking up slightly from the seabed, along with a partially exposed iron frame. They also spotted a well-preserved wooden plank underneath the windlass, which suggests that more of the ship's hull is still down there, just buried under the sand. So why do they feel confident that this wreck is the Koning Willem de Tweede? Well, basically for three reasons. First, the location. The spot where they picked up those signals lines up with historical accounts of where the ship went down. And it just so happens to be the only known shipwreck in that part of Long Beach. Second, the size. The cluster of magnetic signals roughly matches the ship's documented length, which is about 140 feet. Third and last reason, they found pieces of Chinese pottery from the 1800s right on the beach next to the site. When you put all those facts together, it basically screams Koning Willem de Tweede. That's why the team feels so confident they've finally discovered this historic ship. But even though they have good reasons to believe it, more research still needs to be done, so they're planning future visits to the site to keep monitoring things. The goal is to check the ship's condition and look for more parts of the hull or artifacts that might get uncovered as the seabed shifts over time. Let's hope they get lucky next time around. So many asteroids pass through our solar system and we don't even know about it. Those are rocky pieces of material left over from the time when our solar system was forming, about 4.6 billion years ago. They move around the sun, but not in the way planets do. We're talking about true rebels that prefer to follow some pretty strange paths. Plus, they spin in different ways as they travel between planets and other space objects. And the majority of them come from the main asteroid belt that's located between Jupiter and Mars. Most stay there. But Jupiter has quite a strong gravity, so it can push some of those flying rocks in different directions, and towards us too. They're sometimes round, and sometimes they have odd shapes with pits and holes from all that crashing into other space rocks. As we currently know, there are more than 1 million of them in the main asteroid belt, and that's all good until some of them move in our direction. NASA keeps an eye on them, so we know everything's fine, at least for now. But that wasn't always the case with our beloved home planet. If Earth could talk, it would probably share so many crazy asteroid stories. We're talking about those space rocks that left impact craters we call domes. They have a specific shape with a raised center, similar to when you throw a pebble in a pond and see some water splashing upward. But we'll never be able to learn about many others. I know this raised center sounds like something you're supposed to see right away, especially if an asteroid that once slammed into the surface was big. But we're talking about millions and millions of years of erosion, so wind, water, and even gravity do what they do best and erase traces. They wear down impact domes, and some sites even end up hidden under layers of rock and dirt, or they disappear forever because Earth's tectonic plates keep moving around. Check out the moon. It's experienced many collisions too, but over there, there's no ocean or tectonic plates moving around, or even wind to slowly, through millions of years, erase craters from its face. Basically, its entire history is written on its surface. But Earth has its own forces that can erase such places as the Vedafort impact structure and the Chicxulub crater. You know, the famous one that wiped out the dinosaurs? Luckily, scientists have new methods to find ancient craters. they often focus on the mess impacts made, which means the materials they threw around. And the Australian continent is especially interesting since we're talking about a playground for asteroid hits. By that, I mean ancient supercontinent Gondwana that dominated the South hundreds of millions of years ago. Experts know about 38 impacts, plus they speculate about 43 more. Some structures are relatively small, while others are big and completely hidden. And recently, a scientist named Tony Yates has discovered strange underground magnetic patterns in New South Wales, Australia. Yay! New clues of a giant asteroid impact! And when I say giant, I really mean it. It's a structure 323 miles in diameter. This might be the largest impact site ever found. This spot is called the Deniliquin structure. Its magnetic patterns show characteristic ripples around the center, like when a rock hits the water. There are also fractures that go outward from the center. And it seems rocks from inside Earth ended up pushed into these fractures. That's a typical story for big asteroid impacts. This structure was probably located in eastern Gondwana hundreds of millions of years ago, way before it split into several continents, including Australia. At the moment, all we know about this crater is what we see on the surface. To find more information about this collision and get some proof, we'll have to drill into the ground. An asteroid this big is definitely not a joke. It could have caused a massive ice age and maybe even wiped out around 85% of species, even more than the asteroid that ended dinosaurs. In 4.5 billion years, which is how long our planet has existed, it's been punched by hundreds of big asteroids. But that doesn't mean every space rock that enters our atmosphere really makes it all the way to the ground. Most of those that manage to pass the atmosphere are relatively small, for instance, 3 feet across. That's good for us because any space rock that's less than 82 feet in diameter most likely won't make it past our planet's atmosphere. Since these space rocks come towards us very fast, they heat up the gases in the atmosphere, which burns them away. By the way, once cosmic intruders enter our atmosphere, they turn into meteors. And in most cases, they don't cause much damage, if any, as they fall down. But we used to have way larger things flying around and crashing into Earth. At least 190 of them have left scars you can still see today. One of the really big ones is in South Africa. It's 99 miles wide. It's actually the largest. At least that's what scientists think at the moment because they still need to check as many details as possible about this new crater in Australia. This one in South Africa formed about 2 billion years ago, and an asteroid that created it was probably larger than the one that had wiped dinosaurs away. And when an asteroid is bigger than 0.6 miles, it can have really big effects across the world. This impact was so strong that it could have caused fires everywhere and thrown lots of dust into the air. And when you have so much dust in the atmosphere, the climate on the planet can change for months or even years. Then we also have the most popular asteroid that made a giant hole we today call the Chicxulub crater. You know the story. It crashed into our planet 66 million years ago when dinosaurs were wandering around, catching food, falling in love, basically just doing their thing. The crash itself didn't erase them right away. It threw a lot of debris into space, and when it fell back to Earth, fires and flames were everywhere. The hit also produced a big cloud of dust that covered the planet for years. This cloud blocked the sunlight, which harmed plants and entire food chains. Even those dinosaurs that survived the crash and such difficult conditions had a hard time finding food, so they didn't make it. At least they left us many fossils and turned into the inspiration for movies and stories. A long time ago in Canada, something big crashed into our planet and left a big hole we today know as the Sudbury Basin. People used to think it was an asteroid, but now some experts think it might have been a giant comet made up of a mix of ice and rocks. The hole is almost gone now because of weather conditions though. But people still get to mine iron and nickel there, and at the same time find the leftovers of whatever space object fell there. If you move deep in southern India, you'll find a big hole called Lonar Crater. Locals stumbled upon it 200 years ago and believed it might be from a volcano, But now we know it's a trace from a meteor that crashed into the ground about 35 to 50,000 years ago. What's so special about this crater is that it's the only one known to have formed in a type of rock called basalt. Around the crater, there are hills covered in trees, and animals like peafowls and gazelles live there. Birds also like to visit the lake near the crater during the winter. And the lake itself is quite interesting too. It can turn pink because of all those tiny organisms that live there. But this color change doesn't last long.
Have you ever noticed how insects seem to get bigger in certain parts of the world? Take Australia and the Amazon rainforest, for example. They're notorious for having some of the largest and creepiest crawlies around. What's the deal with these hotspots of insect activity? Warmth plays a part in insect growth, but it's not the only factor at play. You won't get bugs that large out in the desert, for instance, despite the heat. The real secret lies in their access to water. In tropical and subtropical environments, there's usually plenty of moisture to go around, which means a year-round supply of delicious snacks. Speaking of snacks, that's where things get interesting. The warm, wet environment creates the perfect conditions for an all-you-can-eat insect buffet, which allows insects to grow and thrive over time. This is true for rats too. Just look at the giant rodents that live in cities, where they can feast on all kinds of garbage and scraps. For bugs, the perfect gem is usually found near the equator, in places like Central and Southern America, parts of Africa and Asia and Northern Australia. Have a look at this one. It's special not because of its large size. Humans rarely see this insect. It's a wood moth and was spotted at a school in Australia. The school is close to a rainforest. It holds a record for being the heaviest moth in the world. It had a wingspan measuring up to 9 inches. In Australia, there are about 60 species of wood moth. Yet many aren't as big as the giant wood moth. The students get to face many animals on campus, such as bush turkeys, koalas, and snakes. But according to the principal, seeing a wood moth was a brand new thing. When we start talking about insects in Australia, it's also hard not to mention spiders. They are impressively big. Again, it's all thanks to the warm climate and abundance of food sources in the Australian bushlands. Like most cold-blooded animals, spiders tend to grow bigger in warmer places. The Australian climate, especially in the northern and central parts, is hot and humid, making it the perfect environment for spiders to grow and thrive. Spiders are also sensitive to temperature, so warmer climates provide them with longer periods to grow before reproduction. Australia's vast bushlands provide more insects for spiders to prey on, making them bigger and stronger. From the crab spider to the Australian bird-eating spider and the huntsman. Although they may look scary, most of them are not dangerous to humans. Now we can take a deep, relaxing breath. So, how do Australians handle big spiders without going crazy? I mean, we are talking about a country that is home to about 10,000 species of spiders. Australians treat spiders with respect, despite the cases of spider bites. They acknowledge that these creatures are not here to scare people. They're an irreplaceable component of the ecosystem. When they face a spider at home, they call the experts if there's no one brave enough to capture the spider and take it outside. Here are some weird-looking animals from Australia. I must admit some look creepy, and some look cool. This one here is a hot pink slug. It has a striking bright pink coloration, which is believed to be an adaptation to their environment. This creature is among the rare and endangered species. You can find it only in a single place, Mount Kapooter National Park. It's near an isolated forest on an old volcano. Insects are part of everyday life in certain parts of this country. A person was mowing the lawn and a surprise was waiting for them. They discovered this 14-inch tall insect. And this person was kind enough to fill the bird bath on a hot day. Then they noticed that birds didn't go near the bath. They wondered why and checked it out. Well, hello there. Next up, we have this giant insect, and it's still alive. Why is it such a shocking thing? Because, it was declared extinct nearly a century ago. I guess it's back from the other side? It's the Lord Howe Island stick insects, aka the tree lobsters. These giant bugs, measuring about 6 inches, used to call this place their home sweet home, but black rats had other plans. These rodents invaded the island, gobbling up everything in their path, including the poor stick insects. By 1920, the bugs were officially declared extinct, but as fate would have it, They made a comeback more than 40 years later on Ball's Pyramid, a volcanic sea stack located 12 miles away. But here's the twist. The new and improved stick insects look slightly different from their ancestors, leaving scientists scratching their heads, wondering if they were the real deal. After some scientific sleuthing and DNA testing, the verdict is in. They're the same species. With less than 1% genetic difference, these plant-eating critters are ready to make a triumphant return to their homeland. We're about to take the creepy crawlies to a whole new level. In Australia, there's a centipede that'll make you want to crawl out of your skin. I must also say these animals are nocturnal too. Can you imagine waking up with one of these 6-inch long centipedes crawling across your foot? Have you ever seen an insect that looks like it came straight out of a science fiction movie? Well, let me introduce you to the Australian walking stick. If we showed you a picture of this creepy crawler, you'd probably think we had some mad Photoshop skills. But no, this stick insect is as real as they come. It's hard to believe such a bizarre-looking creature could actually exist in nature. This just goes to show how incredible and mind-boggling nature can be. Picture this. You're wandering through your garden, minding your own business, when suddenly you walk face-first into a sticky web. Before you have a chance to freak out, you see the culprit, a garden orb weaver spider. These nocturnal creatures might look scary with their large, hairy bodies and red-brown to yellow markings, but luckily they're harmless to humans. In fact, having them around can be a good thing, since they help to reduce insect pests like mosquitoes. Their webs are truly a marvel of nature, strong and nearly invisible, with a large capture area for prey. And if you accidentally break their web, don't worry. They'll usually get the hint and move somewhere else. So go ahead and enjoy your garden, but watch out for those sneaky garden orb weavers. Check out this hefty Aussie critter, the burrowing cockroach. Unlike those pesky flying roaches, these fellas are wingless and not considered a nuisance. They've got a vital role to play in the ecosystem, munching on fallen leaves and recycling other organic matter. You might find them chilling out in a cozy burrow. In fact, they're the only known cockroach with a permanent subterranean abode. These crawlies are practically celebrities in Brisbane, where they're even kept as pets. Our next subject is the Hercules moth. This little thing can only be found chillin' in New Guinea and northern Australia. Now let's talk about why the Hercules moth is so impressive. For starters, it's massive. It boasts a wingspan of 11 inches, making it the biggest moth in all of Australia. Not only that, but its wings have a surface area, making it the largest of any insect alive. Talk about impressive. When it comes to appearances, the Hercules moth is mostly golden brown and white, with see-through spots on each of its 4 wing sections. The coloring and patterns don't differ too much between males and females, but the males have longer, skinnier tails on their wings. The thing about these types of animals is that you never know where they'll fly. Will they land on your shoulder or the tree next to you? Have you ever encountered a giant insect? If yes, what did you do? Tell us your story.
It was a regular dive in Australia's Great Barrier Reef for underwater photographer Christian Lane. He was taking photos of a group of male manta rays chasing a female one when suddenly he saw something that made him check if his camera strobes had been broken. There was a pink manta ray in his viewfinder. Other underwater beauties of its kind are usually black on top and white underneath. This creature Christian met that day was black on top and pink on the bottom. It turned out the photographer met Inspector Clouseau, the only known pink manta ray in the world living in the waters around Lady Elliot Island. It was named after the famous detective from Pink Panther movies. It was calm, looking at the photographer with its huge eyes. It even seemed that it was smiling at his guest, as Christian remembered in an interview. He managed to take 5 good photos of Inspector Clouseau in the 30 minutes they spent together. Divers first spotted the unique manta ray in 2015, and it was only seen less than 10 times ever since. First, the scientists thought the secret to this unusual color was in its diet. They took a sample of its skin and found out it was actually a result of a genetic mutation that caused it to express melanin differently. Many fish have it, but it usually turns them into albinos. For a regular sea creature, a combo of black, which blends with dark waters and can't be seen from above, and white, which blends with light, is ideal protection. A color mutation with pink in the picture would make other sea animals more vulnerable to predators. But a manta ray weighing as much as a car and 1.5 times taller than an average basketball player definitely has nothing to be afraid of. These creatures are born rather big and grow fast in the first few years so they can defend themselves. If you were impressed by a manta ray the shade of bubblegum, meet blue bees. These unique Australian inhabitants have turquoise stripes instead of yellow, which makes them look like flying sapphires. Their thin brown wings look like layers of cellophane with engraved patterns. Another unusual thing about them is their lifestyle. The blue-banded bees are singles. They don't move in swarms and don't live in large nests. They prefer settling in small burrows in the soil or crevices in rocks. Blue bees also have a special way of pollination. They sit on the flower, hold it tightly, and shake the whole body to make the flower move quickly and gently. Then the bees stop and collect all the pollen that goes out of the capsule inside the flower. Blue bees work for Australian agriculture, helping with tomatoes, cranberries, eggplants, blueberries, kiwi, and chili peppers. The next unique Australian animal is called the happiest on this planet. A quokka never stops smiling and looks like a live teddy bear. It's a nocturnal creature the size of a cat. It has inherited its appearance from its relative, the kangaroo. It also has a pouch, which serves as a home for its offspring for 6 months. Quokkas have a diet of grass, shrubs, and leaves. When there isn't enough food, they can use stored fat in their tails as a source of energy. They mostly live on Rottnest Island off the coast of Western Australia. Since there's no predators or traffic there, quokkas have nothing to fear and gladly come into contact with humans. It's against the law to touch them, but no one has banned taking selfies. When you look into the eyes of this cutie pie, the only question is, who on earth would call it the Tasmanian devil? Well, it wasn't that friendly to the European settlers who came to Tasmania in the early 19th century. The cutie pie greeted them with frightening growls, high-pitched screeches, and unearthly screams. They had no more doubts about how to name it when they saw its red ears and extra white jaws with sharp teeth. But when it doesn't have to defend itself, its meals, or impress a mate, the creature goes back to its cute appearance. And although these guys are the world's largest surviving carnivorous marsupials, they don't hunt their prey, but eat carrion. They're mostly active at night, but also enjoy some time in the sun, especially in the water, splashing around. Female devils have pouches to carry their offspring, and up to 4 of those fit in at the same time. Our next hero of the day is so unique that the first scientist to describe it thought they were dealing with a hoax. A platypus has a bill and webbed feet like a duck, the tail of a beaver, and the body and fur of an otter. Males also have sharp stingers with venom on the heels of their rear feet, which they can use to defend themselves from enemies. A venomous mammal is something super rare. Platypuses paddle their way through life as they hunt underwater. They can spend up to 2 minutes submerged to smell some food on the bottom. They don't have any teeth, so they use gravel to chew their lunch. Platypuses don't look that graceful as they move on land, but they can run if they really have to. Echidna is another unique Australian natural hybrid. It has porcupine-like spines, a beak much like that of a bird, a pouch like a wombat's, and lays eggs like a reptile. It feeds its offspring on milk, which just oozes out of the skin in the pouch, and the little one enjoys it. Since it has traits of both a mammal and a reptile, it got its name after a creature from Greek mythology, who was half woman and half snake. Echidnas have pretty strong snouts, which they use to break open logs and termite mounds. Their sense of smell is so good, they can smell food and danger. Their limbs are short with shovel-like claws, perfect for digging out food. Echidnas don't like the company of people or other animals, but you can still find them all over Australia, from deserts to rainforests and mountains. They are the country's most widespread native mammal. Echidnas are great swimmers, and they've been spotted crossing rivers. When the weather gets too harsh for them, they burrow into the soil or in hollow logs and burrows left by other animals. This guy, looking like a mix of a koala and a kangaroo, is a tree kangaroo. It doesn't like the company of others and hides among the trees in tropical rainforests of the mountains in Queensland, New Guinea, and nearby islands. They don't build nests and just camp on any branch they find safe. Tree kangaroos are born well prepared for this way of living, with shorter hind limbs, strong arms, and a long tail for balance to leap among the branches. They have broader feet than their ground relatives and padded soles with sharp curved claws to help them grip during climbing. Tree kangaroos are great long-distance jumpers, both between trees and from their tops. All this makes them rather clumsy when they're on the ground. The heavy tail makes them hop funnily, leaning far forward to keep balance. They also have a cool talent for moving their hind limbs independently while walking. They spend around 60% of their lives sleeping. Sounds like a dream. There are at least 12 species of this cutie, with fur colors from golden and red to black and dark brown. Did you just hear the chainsaw sound? There must be a lyrebird nearby. Those guys have the superpower of copying sounds from their surroundings. With the help of some complex muscles in its syrinx, a lyrebird can mimic camera shutters, different tools, other birds, and reportedly even human speech. It takes them up to 1 year to master this talent, and then they can use it to fool their rivals. Lyrebirds mostly hang out close to the ground and rarely fly. They got their name after the shape of their beautiful tail. It's a great mating tool as it does look like a lyre when opened. Why is Australia so strangely empty? Why haven't we discovered so much of the ocean? Is our planet a perfect sphere? And was the Earth once more purple than green? I bet you didn't know these facts about our planet, so let's find it all out. Australia is really massive. To make it easy to understand its size, it's nearly as large as the entirety of Europe. Home to around 26 million people, Australia is among the countries with the least population per area. It's ranked only 55th for the highest population in the world, while it has the 6th largest land area. Why is so much of it empty? A good guess would be the many dangerous animals hiding behind every rock. At least this is enough for me to avoid Australia. But there's one specific reason to explain this. The dryness of Australia ensures that 85% of the population lives within 30 miles of the coast, and 80% of them live along the eastern side, where rainfall is more common. But although there is an overall lack of rainfall, only 20% of Australia is unlivable desert, and only 40% is considered not habitable by human standards. The water consumption is actually higher than their average rainfall each year. But there is a further ancient water source hidden way below, which can support a much larger population. It's one of the largest underground freshwater resources in the world, the Great Artesian Basin. It covers a staggering 656,000 square miles, which is 1/5 the size of Australia. It holds enough water to cover the Earth under a 1.5 feet deep layer of water. Or, more usefully, it could provide enough water for thirsty Australians over the next 1,500 years. Only 6.5% of Australia has soil suitable for farming, so this doesn't seem like a huge amount. But in case you forgot, Australia is big, and this small percentage is about the size of France. With this massive area available for farming, Australia has more than enough to feed its population, with a further 70% of agriculture products that are exported overseas. So, with plenty of land, food, and water, why are the population figures so low? A very slow migration process is the reason. First, only people from the United Kingdom lived there. Then, they opened their borders to other Europeans, and this restriction remained in place until 1973. You would think almost 200 years would be enough time for a lot of people to migrate, but Australia was just so far away. The risk of traveling such a long way and the cost of the journey meant that people from Europe prefer the shorter and cheaper options to migrate elsewhere, like Canada or the USA. For the past 2,000 years, people have understood that Earth is round. But did you know that it's not a perfect sphere? Through the wobbly rotation of Earth, our planet constantly changes its size, very slowly of course. The North and South poles are surprisingly flat. Earth is pretty much like a ball being squished. Imagine there's a giant hand with the fingers pressing at both poles. Because of this pressure, the equator pushes a little outwards. Along with an uneven gravitational field, Earth has loads of gravity glitches, some positive and others negative, creating an uneven, rocky, and bumpy surface. Some places on Earth have more gravity than others. If you weighed yourself along the equator, you would weigh 0.5% less than at the poles. Not a whole lot, and definitely not worth the trip to change your weight. If you were to measure the length from the center of the Earth towards the furthest point of Earth, you would be shocked that Mount Everest isn't at the end of it. Instead, it's along the equator, which is the pushed out part. Ecuador's mountain Chimborazo would actually be the tallest point on Earth, as it's the furthest from the center. We still have around 80% of the ocean to map, which is crazy considering how much of the solar system we've explored in comparison. But we're still aware of many of the unbelievable details about the ocean. It covers over 80% of the world's surface, where 94% of the Earth's wildlife lives. And from some of the life in it, up to 80% of the world's oxygen is produced mainly from plankton, algae, and bacteria. One of the most famous, already mapped places is the Mariana Trench. It's the deepest point on Earth, as low as almost 7 miles deep. That's a huge, 5 times the length of the Grand Canyon, and deeper than Mount Everest is tall. It's also home to one of the most ancient seabeds on Earth, casually laying low for about 180 million years. The pressure at the bottom is over 1,000 bars, but although this is 1,000 times more than normal pressure, life still flourishes here. Throughout the ocean, there is an estimated over 3 million shipwrecks lying in the murky depths. Countless artifacts sit there untouched, and there could be more than all the world's museums. The mid-ocean ridge is the longest in the world, reaching 40,000 miles. That's almost 10 times the size of the Andes, the longest mountain range on land. The sun is the reason behind the blue and aqua colors of the ocean. This color isn't from the reflection of the sky, though they are both blue for the same reason. The surface of our planet receives white light from the sun, and it absorbs the orange, red, and yellow light stronger. It doesn't absorb the blue light so much, so it returns to how we see it. Of course, this only occurs based on how pure the water is. If the water is full of mud or algae, they scatter the light and overpower the water's natural blueness. There are many factors that determine what color we see on our planet. Could you believe that the Earth was green before? Instead, it was purple. Chlorophyll in our atmosphere absorbs mainly blue and red wavelengths from the sun and reflects the green ones to what we see our planet as today. Long ago, ancient microbes called retinol dominated the Earth instead of chlorophyll. They absorbed green light and reflected red and violet light. Those microbes had a simpler structure, so they were easier to produce in the low oxygen environment of the early Earth. They provided our planet with a purplish color instead of green. But chlorophyll is more efficient, and as the Earth was developing, it eventually took over. Imagine that billions of years ago, faraway observers could see our home as a small purple dot. I wonder if we could have also been purple. Probably not. The biggest tree on Earth is a giant sequoia named General Sherman. It stands over 280 feet, almost reaching the height of a 26-story building. They believe it to be 2,700 years old, with a circumference of 1,000 inches. Its weight is a staggering 1,800 tons. That's heavy, but it isn't the heaviest living thing on Earth. In Utah, a huge grove of trees called Pando works like a single colony of trees. The massive root system connects all of them together with up to 47,000 stems. It weighs up to 6,000 tons and is 80,000 years old. It makes it the oldest living thing known to humans. Now, what about the biggest area of one being? Off the coast of Western Australia, a seaweed grows to an unthinkable size. The Poseidon's ribbon weed has been growing for 4,500 years, spreading underground clone shoots. It's all connected and shares the same DNA with most of its shoots. It covers a massive 77 square miles, the same size as 28,000 soccer fields, or the size of Nebraska. And it won't stop there either, as it continues to grow by 2 feet each year. It's hard to even picture the scale of these enormous beings. Now, just imagine if they were all purple.
Have you ever wondered what's inside of a kangaroo's pouch? Maybe they're saving some snacks for later. Maybe it's for their house keys. Or perhaps they're used to their part-time job transporting people to work every day. The short answer is kangaroos use the pouch to carry their young, or joey. They need the bag because after a short gestation period of up to 36 days, the joey is born and crawls into the pouch for their continued development, where other mammals would not. Once he is born, it's the size of a jelly bean. Although he is deaf and blind, it has an acute sense of smell and finds its way into the warm and protected pouch. The joey will then attach itself to the mother to drink milk, where it receives nutrients, and from there it will live, grow, and develop for the outside world for the next 4 to 6 months. Once the joey develops enough, it can leave the pouch and stretch its legs to adapt to the world outside. But it will still go back to feed inside the pouch for a further 6 to 12 months. These time frames vary depending on the types of species of kangaroos. There are 4 different types. The red kangaroo, the largest of all the kangaroos and all terrestrial animals in Australia, is found throughout the mainland, though generally in deserts and open grasslands. Nicknamed the Big Red, it can stand as tall as 6 feet and weigh up to 200 pounds. The eastern grey is mainly typical of the eastern coasts. These are the second largest, with a height of 5 feet tall and a weight of up to 180 pounds. The antilopine kangaroo, the smallest of the 4, is located in the far northern tropical regions. Their height reaches up to 4 feet tall, and they can weigh as much as 110 pounds. And lastly, you'll find the western grey in the southwestern and southern areas of the continent, weighing up to 120 pounds while standing up to 4 feet tall. Of all the different sizes, their most notable ability is to leap forward in a bouncing motion, covering vast distances. The Big Red can cover up to a staggering 30 feet in just one bounce. Although, what makes the kangaroo so unique isn't uncommon in Australia. They share evolutionary traits with other classifications of macropods. Wallabies, wallaroos, quokkas, and patamelons are distant cousins of the kangaroo, with several species in each classification. They all come in many different sizes and live in the unique areas that they've adapted to throughout Australia and New Guinea. Although marsupials were once more common throughout the rest of the world, it's unclear where they originated. The old fossils of marsupials were found in North America, but it is clear that the marsupials slowly made their way down under and came through South America, across Antarctica, until finally into Australia. Of course, we're keeping in mind that this was when the continents were all still attached. Once making it to Australia, they quickly adapted without competition from the other animals. Some other mammals made it to Australia around the same time. The bat family and the rodent family, it's not surprising that mice and rats had managed to make it to Australia before humans. Although Australia's climate would have been very different from what we know of it today, marsupials had adapted quickly to the changes. There has been some debate about the unique characteristics of the marsupial were better suited for the drastic changes in weather as opposed to other animals. The smaller gestation period allows their young to feed on milk a lot sooner. Marsupial milk has growth and immunity factors greater than other mammals' milk, which could be beneficial in a harsher environment, which is why marsupials are more prominent in Australia. The kangaroo has explicitly adapted over the ages. Their success in adaptation reflects on their current population of around 48 million throughout Australia, easily outnumbering the human population. although their success is not entirely due to their unique traits. It's mainly due to the lack of predators. The dingo. The mammal migrated to Australia approximately 8,000 years ago, but their numbers are controlled around most of Australia. And then there was also the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger, which slowly disappeared from the mainland since humans arrived around 50,000 years ago. And it's estimated they disappeared completely around 4,000 years ago, allowing marsupials like the kangaroo to thrive. The fascinating thing about thylacine is that it provides an excellent example of convergent evolution. It is the process where animals not closely related independently evolve similar traits. The thylacine and the gray wolf come from entirely different parts of the planet and only share a common ancestor that existed at least 160 million years ago, yet they evolved similarly. Other marsupials fit the category of convergent evolution. The marsupial sugar glider, which is like the placental flying squirrel, the hopping mouse, which is like the North American kangaroo rat. There are types of marsupials and other moles. The Tasmanian devil is like the hyena and wolverine, and the wombat has resemblances to the groundhog and marmot. The possums and their cousin, the opossum in North America, has evolved to have opposable thumbs, a feature found in primates. Hedgehogs and porcupines, mammals completely unrelated to Australia, have their unique spikes, but share this similarity with the echidna. The echidna is another mammal altogether and not a marsupial. It is of the monotreme order. The echidna is one of the only two left in the monotreme mammals. Unlike other mammals, monotremes don't produce live young, but lay eggs, of which their young, or puggle, hatches just 10 days after being laid. But like all other mammals, the puggle will drink milk from their mother. A further example of convergent evolution is with the koala, which has evolved to have fingerprints like primates. The koala has adapted through the warming of the weather in Australia. As the climate became drier, there was a distinct change in the fauna throughout the continent. Eucalyptus trees became more prominent as they more easily adapted to drier climates. Over 70% of native forestry in Australia is currently eucalyptus. The eucalyptus leaves, or gum leaves, are deficient in nutrition. They are so low in nutritional value that they shouldn't be the main diet. But the koala took advantage of this uncontested food and adapted over time, and now they only eat them, and they'll gorge themselves up to 6 times per day. It ensures that they need to sleep up to 20 hours each day, but although they sleep a lot, they're very safe high above the eucalyptus trees. The animal world in Australia is strange as it is diverse, but even those natives in this land have their own stories that make them even more bizarre. Indigenous Australians have stories from the dream time, telling tales of weird animals that existed. One mythological animal was the bunyip. It has been told in tales as a beast that lurked within the swamps, rivers, and lakes. Although commonly known as the bunyip, it's also referred by many different names throughout the country. Before Europeans arrived in Australia, there existed around 250 languages within the native population. Each language has a similar story of a beast that lived within the water, which would provide a valuable lesson to young children to be careful around swamps and rivers. The bunyip's various forms, scales, fur, or feathers, sizes as small as a dog and as large as a buffalo. Some are unimaginably strange in appearance, but others weren't too dissimilar to actual animals like the crocodile. A precursor to how mythological creatures like the bunyip were created had likely originated from bones and fossils of existing animals. For example, in Europe, stories about dragons are argued that they probably originated from finding dinosaur fossils. Fossils are the likely foundations for the stories based around the infamous bunyip, animals from the megafauna period, which around 2.5 million years ago saw the largest of them all. This period ended about 20,000 years ago. Variations of the bunyip coincide with animals that once lived during this period. The thylacoleo, also known as the marsupial lion, was a large and powerful carnivorous marsupial. The diprotodon, which resembled a giant wombat, weighed around 6,000 pounds and was 10 feet long. A further version was of a beaked bunyip covered in feathers related to the Dromornithidae. a bird standing at 10 feet tall. Each of these was from a time when megafauna was more common, and humans lived among them for a short period. Although the age of megafauna in Australia has long passed, there are still animals that adapted to the changes in the drying continent, the new species introduction, and even the involvement of humans. The 4 kangaroos, the red eastern, the western gray, and the antilopine, are still living reminders of the age of megafauna.
When you first see this creature, it may seem to you that this is a flying sapphire. The blue-banded bee is as beautiful as this gem. These flying beetles have turquoise stripes instead of yellow. Their huge green eyes resemble emeralds. And their thin brown wings look like layers of cellophane with engraved patterns. Appearance is not the only thing that distinguishes them from ordinary bees. The blue-banded ones are singles. They don't move in swarms and don't live in large nests. These beetles like settling in small burrows in the soil or crevices in rocks. Another cool difference between our blue guys and ordinary bees is their unique way of pollination. Scientists call it buzz pollination. The blue bee sits on the flower, holds it tightly, and begins to shake the whole body. It creates a series of small, fast vibrations. This way, the bee also shakes the flower, quickly and gently. These movements make the pollen move out of the anther. Then the bee stops and collects all this pollen. Some scientists think these bees prefer pollinating purple flowers. This helps the blue bees blend in with the plant and remain unnoticed by enemies. But this theory hasn't been proved yet. The blue-banded bees mainly inhabit the territory of Australia. They are an important element in the agriculture of this country. These bees work with tomatoes, cranberries, eggplants, blueberries, kiwi, and chili peppers. Ordinary bees can't pollinate most of those plants, but their blue relatives can. On a global scale, more than 8% of plants in the world need to be pollinated through buzz pollination. That's why farmers love and protect blue-banded bees so much. Wasps and bees are very similar in appearance. Sometimes they can be difficult to tell apart, but their lifestyle is totally different. Bees are quiet beetles that spend all their time pollinating plants, collecting nectar from flowers, and making honey. We can say that bees are small, powerful trucks, but wasps are racing supercars. They are more aggressive, much faster, and more maneuverable in the air. Their stings are more painful. Yes, they can also carry pollen from one plant to another and feed on nectar, but their main mission is to control the population of insect pests, such as aphids and some species of caterpillars. According to some estimates, wasps manage to get rid of more than 14,000 tons of insects in the UK alone during one summer. Imagine how much they do all over the world. Wasps are dangerous beetles, but among them, there is one kind that is distinguished by its peaceful nature and lifestyle. This is the mud dauber wasp. It also has a black and yellow coloring, but it looks more elegant. A swarm of regular wasps is controlled by the queen, but mud daubers are solitary creatures. They build a small nest of mud in which they live with their children. A mud dauber will bite only if it's in danger. Unlike other wasps, these insects only use their venom to paralyze spiders, flies, and caterpillars. Then, they bring them to their nest to feed their children. So don't be surprised if you see a large horde of paralyzed spiders inside the nest. There can be more than 500 bugs in one nest. When little wasps hatch from eggs, they immediately begin their feast. The most unfriendly wasp species is the hornet. They are also wasps, but bigger, angrier, and with an even more painful bite. Its bite is one of the most dangerous among all insects. This critter can grow to be the size of a thumb. That's 3 times as large as a regular bee. Hornets attack in a huge swarm and pose a great danger to any animal. To fight them, people wear thick protective suits that resemble spacesuits. But the worst thing is that hornets invade hives and reduce the bee population. This can lead to a catastrophe on a planetary scale, since bees pollinate more than half of all fruits, vegetables, grains, and nuts in the world. Look at this big buzzing bumblebee. There's something wrong with it. It lands on a flower. And wait a minute, this is not a bumblebee at all. It's some kind of green-orange beautiful beetle. Oh, now it takes off and looks like a bumblebee again. Meet the pellucid hawk moth. Thanks to its color and transparent wings, it creates the illusion of a bumblebee. The wings of most insects serve for thermoregulation. They warm their body. Other insects have wings that help them fight enemies. A butterfly manages to look like a large creature thanks to the pattern on its wings. Some insects communicate using vibrations created by their wings. Colored wings have many different purposes, but the pellucid hawk moth has transparent wings, and their main function is to avoid reflecting sunlight. These fast-moving transparent wings practically don't shine in the light and tone down the color of the beetle. Thanks to this, when the moth is flying, other insects perceive it as a bumblebee and are afraid to attack it. These bumblebee copycats are found in Africa, India, Southeast Asia, and Australia. At the beginning of life, they are bright green caterpillars that feed on coffee and pomegranate leaves. From afar, it may seem that a hamster is sitting on the trunk of a tree, but this is actually the southern flannel moth. It's large and covered with thick fur. Don't try and pet it if you don't want to go to a hospital. There are many poisonous thorns hidden inside this fur coat. Even a light prick can make you experience lots of unpleasant sensations. Other insects that pretend to be bees and wasps are hoverflies. They look like wasps, fly like wasps, and imitate a wasp's sting. But their coolest ability is copying bee buzzing. In reality, though, hoverflies are fragile, harmless creatures. Their ability to transform into bees is essential for their survival, and it works great. Many animals and insects are afraid to approach these skillful actors. But in the entire animal world, lyrebirds get the title of the most talented imitators. These small birds, with large, beautiful tails resembling a lyre, live in Australia. Imagine getting lost in a forest far away from a big city. Suddenly, you hear the sound of a chainsaw. You don't see people, but the sound is getting closer. Then you hear the clicking of a camera shutter. But there are no people with cameras around. Lyrebirds create all these sounds. Thanks to all the complex muscles of their syrinx, they can mimic the sound of almost anything. Some people heard these birds imitating human speech. Also, they are good forest designers. Female lyrebirds build domed nests on the ground, in stumps and caves. They usually lay one egg there and take care of the baby for the first 6 to 10 weeks. Let's go down from the sky to the ocean to see other tiny creatures. Meet blue-ringed octopus. This little guy looks so small and cute. Its bright neon color and blue rings are visible from afar. The octopus can easily fit in your palm, but it's better not to touch it. Meeting a great white shark may not be as dangerous as encountering this tiny creature. It's one of the most treacherous sea inhabitants in the world because of its venom. One bite can knock down a huge African elephant. The octopus is much more dangerous than a king cobra or a black widow spider because its bite often goes unnoticed. You may not feel or see when it stings you, and when you realize that something is wrong, it may be too late. Also, there's no antidote to the blue-ringed octopus's venom. The creature's salivary glands are home to bacteria that produce this venom. The same substance is found in the venom of pufferfish. When it enters the human body, it paralyzes the entire nervous system. The lungs stop contracting to supply the body with oxygen. The only good news is that this octopus is unlikely to attack first. The last recorded case when this creature charged at people was in the 60s. The blue-ringed octopus lives in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, from the coast of Japan to Australia. They spend most of their time in tide pools and coral reefs. Now we move to the hot sands of the southeastern U.S. states. You can find fire ants here. Outwardly, they don't differ much from regular bugs. But people call them fire ants because of their bite. Their poison resembles a flame. You're likely to feel the bite site burning. Therefore, it's better not to touch them and go away before any of these ants crawl into your pants.
In Asia, there's a bridge that is way longer than you'd think should even be possible. The HZMB stretches 34 miles over open water, which makes it the longest sea bridge in the world. So if something this massive can make it across rough waters, why can't New Zealand just build a bridge between its two main islands? After all, we're talking about a distance of just 14 miles. And a bridge like that could seriously change life for both locals and tourists. People could just hop in a car and drive from Wellington to Picton. No more ferry hassles, no more drawn-out trips. Just one epic road journey with ocean views on both sides. So what's stopping them? Well, turns out, everything. I mean, building a bridge there is technically possible, but there are a couple reasons why experts are like, maybe not. Let's start with the obvious. The distance. The North Island and the South Island are separated by Cook Strait. Like I said, it's 14 miles wide at its narrowest point. That's not much, true. Plus, we've got the HZMB bridge, proving that, yep, it is technically possible to build a bridge over the sea to cover that distance. But we can't ignore the fact that New Zealand's geography is, well, a whole different ballgame. Cook Strait isn't exactly a calm, friendly stretch of water. It's deep, really deep. Parts of it drop to about 10,000 feet. That's like stacking 7 Empire State Buildings on top of each other. It's also a rough, moody stretch of ocean that loves tossing around ships like rubber ducks. In fact, quite a few have been wrecked in Cook Strait. And sadly, many lives were lost. You don't have to worry about it so much though, as the worst accidents happened a long time ago. The ships and ferries that cross it today are much safer. Even so, it'd be pretty hard to avoid getting seasick while crossing it. Things get even messier below the surface. The seafloor over there is uneven and unpredictable. What happens is that Cook Strait has opposing tides at each end, one where it meets the Tasman Sea and the other where it joins the Pacific Ocean. And they simply don't move together like you might expect. When the tide is high on one side, it's low on the other, and they're totally out of sync. So all that water rushes back and forth through the strait to balance things out, creating some really strong and messy currents in the middle. Then there's the weather. Cook Strait isn't just windy, it's probably one of the windiest places in the southern hemisphere. That's because it's located right in the middle of one of New Zealand's 3 big wind tunnels. Basically, there are places where the wind doesn't just come and go quickly. It sticks around, blowing hard for most of the year. And all of this happens because of something called the Roaring Forties. That's the name for the latitude band between 40 and 50 degrees south of the equator, where strong, persistent westerly winds are pretty common. Unlike the northern hemisphere, which has a lot of land at this latitude, the southern hemisphere is mostly ocean with just a few land masses, like New Zealand's South Island, Tasmania, and the southern tip of South America. So, these winds go wild because there's nothing to slow them down, and they just keep picking up speed. The gusts there can reach up to 150 miles per hour. So, imagine trying to cross a bridge in a car when the wind is actively pushing against you. That's not just unpleasant, it's super dangerous. Drivers can easily lose control of their cars with the wind pushing them sideways. And of course, that can lead to countless serious accidents. Now, let's talk about earthquakes. New Zealand sits right on the boundary of 2 massive tectonic plates, the Indo-Australian and Pacific plates. It's basically in the middle of a collision zone. And about 14,000 earthquakes happen in and around the country every year. Of those, only about 200 are big enough to be felt. Still, building a massive bridge under these conditions would require some serious genius-level engineering. With all that in mind, we can safely say that the whole bridge idea is off the table. But how about an underwater tunnel? Yep, that could work. It could be a great solution actually. No wind, no bad weather, and no earthquakes to deal with. There are a bunch of other advantages too. First, it would dramatically reduce travel time, cutting down the 3 to 4 hour sailing trip between the North and South Islands. That same journey would probably only take about 40 minutes. Then people wouldn't have to stress about all the ferry cancellations and delays because of bad weather. And most importantly, it's doable. I mean, look at the Channel Tunnel. It's an undersea tunnel connecting southern England and northern France. Japan did something similar with the Seikan Tunnel, which connects the islands of Honshu and Hokkaido. They are both huge projects, serving pretty much the same purpose. So why on earth isn't New Zealand already building this tunnel? Well, for the same reason we don't all live in luxury treehouses with personal robots: money. Estimates vary, but some experts think a project like this could cost anywhere from $10 to $20 billion. To cover that kind of cost, they'd probably need to charge tolls for the next 100 years. And trust me, those tolls wouldn't be cheap. Other experts think it could actually cost more than that. Because you see, we have to consider all the extra infrastructure. The narrowest point of Cook Strait is between the North Island and Arapawa Island. That's one of the long, mountainous regions in the Marlborough Sounds, which is pretty remote. So it's not just about the cost of the bridge or tunnel itself, it's also the access roads, safety systems, maintenance, and evacuation plans. You can't just build a huge underwater tunnel and not plan for the occasional emergencies. And what would it actually be used for? Sure, there are people who travel between the islands. About 1 million passengers take the ferry every year. But that's not exactly the kind of traffic that justifies the most expensive infrastructure project in the country's history. Earlier, we talked about how England and Japan have similar underwater tunnels. But there's something to consider. The United Kingdom has a population of 69 million. Japan has even more, with around 123 million people. And in New Zealand, they've only got 5 million residents to pay for this project. So could they have a tunnel under Cook Strait? Sure they could. Should they? Probably not. If you don't want to fly, the only other way to travel between the islands is by ferry. It's not ideal, but hey, it works. New Zealand has a total of 5 ships that transport people and vehicles across the islands. For tourists who aren't in a rush, it's perfect. You can cross the islands while taking in some of the most stunning views and spotting amazing wildlife. You'll start your trip in Wellington, and right from there, you'll see the rugged North Island coastline as you head out into open water. You might see different seabirds like gulls and terns, and as you get closer to the South Island, you might spot some gannets. If you're lucky, you could also catch a glimpse of the seal colonies off the coast. During the last hour of the trip, the ferry will slow down, giving you plenty of time to enjoy the green hills and calm waters. You will also approach Queen Charlotte Sound, a spot known for its wildlife. So keep an eye out for orcas, playful dolphins, and even penguins. Honestly, having a ferry instead of a tunnel might not be so bad after all.
New Zealand is located in the Southwest Pacific, and it isn't just a country of mountains, the world's quirkiest creatures, and hobbit holes. But here's another cool fact. New Zealand sits on top of a hidden continent that's 94% underwater. That's right, just the tip of a sunken landmass more than half the size of Australia. And with sea levels rising, one question keeps, surfacing. Is it possible that all these remarkable creatures will need swimming lessons one day? Zealandia is a sprawling, drowned continent stretching from New Zealand to New Caledonia. This underwater region has mountains, valleys, and its own geological personality. But wait, how can something underwater be called a continent? Well, it turns out being underwater doesn't disqualify you from being a continent. It just makes you harder to spot. Most people think of continents as giant landmasses you can walk on. But geologists don't define continents by what's above water. They define them by what they're made of. You see, most of Earth's crust is oceanic, thin, dense, and made of basalt. However, continents sit on continental crust, which is thicker, lighter, and much older. That's the case with Zealandia. Even though it's mostly submerged, it's composed of the same kind of crust as Australia or South America. It has mountain ranges, sediment basins, fault lines, it's not your fault, and even fossils that prove it once had forests and land creatures. Zealandia was above sea level during the age of dinosaurs, and while we haven't found a raptor-like theropod skeleton yet, there's no reason to believe we won't. So how was this discovery made? Since most of Zealandia sits about 1/2 to 1.5 miles underwater, it wasn't easy. We can't drain the region like a bathtub just to take a look. So the answer had to be technology. Scientists used satellites to calculate tiny changes in Earth's gravity to spot what was hiding under the waves. Yep, fun fact, there are satellites that can measure gravity now. For example, NASA's mission GRACE has 2 satellites that find small changes in Earth's gravity. It does this by measuring how far apart the satellites are as they move over different things. Scientists also use sonar to map out the underwater mountains and valleys in 3D. Finally, deep ocean drilling pulled up ancient rock, soil, and even land-based fossils from beneath the seafloor. Physical proof that this wasn't just the ocean floor. Not that scientists use all this tech in that exact order, like following steps on a checklist. It actually took decades of overlapping data from land, sea, and space to connect the dots. By the early 2000s, enough evidence had piled up that some geologists began to speak openly about a possible hidden continent. Still, it wasn't until 2017 that Zealandia was formally proposed as one, backed by clear geological criteria. And in 2023, after decades of mapping and research, Zealandia became the first continent to be fully mapped while almost entirely underwater. But why did it sink in the first place? Long ago, all of Earth's land was joined in a single supercontinent called Pangaea. Around 200 million years ago, yeah, I wasn't around then, it began to split apart. The northern half became Laurasia, which included what is now North America, Europe, and most of Asia. The southern half became Gondwana, made up of present-day South America, Africa, Antarctica, Australia, India, and Zealandia. About 85 million years ago, Zealandia broke off from Gondwana. It used to be connected to Australia and Antarctica, but when it split, its crust became too thin and stretched out. That made it less sturdy and more prone to sinking. You can think of it like a piece of ice that floats lower in the water after it breaks off a bigger chunk. Over time, tectonic forces, like plate movement and the loss of its deeper support, caused most of it to sink. It didn't just sink because it was weak, but because it was pulled down by Earth's shifting plates. It settled lower into the mantle because it didn't have the structure to stay higher up. Today, only the highest ridges, like New Zealand, remain above water. That's kind of cool to think about. If Zealandia had never sunk, Wellington would be somewhere up to 9,800 feet high. That's higher than Aspen, Colorado. Now, we know New Zealand is packed with weird and wonderful animals, birds that can't fly, bugs that glow, sheep that outnumber people. But what about its underwater world? Is it just as special? Actually, yeah. And honestly, maybe even cooler. Zealandia's sunken edges are home to marine life that's just as unique and isolated as the wildlife on land. We're talking thousands of species that evolved in near total obscurity, tucked away on a submerged continental shelf. Think of it as Earth's secret underwater lab. This is all thanks to diverse temperatures and over 50 different habitats in coastal regions alone. Take fish, for example. Some are delicious. But around 300 species found in these waters are endemic, meaning if you don't live near New Zealand, you'll never see them. This cute little fish is called southern lemon sole, and it stands out with its asymmetrical, pancake-like body and the odd habit of burying itself almost completely in sand, leaving just its eyes poking out. And the deeper you go, the stranger it gets. Zealandia's underwater slopes and canyons have creatures that feel like they were designed during a power outage at the Evolution Lab. My favorite is carnivorous sponges. Yep, sponges that eat meat. There are also sea daisies, which are small, flat, round creatures that don't seem to fit neatly into any specific family of animals. Scientists have discovered these unique little animals hanging onto sunken wood more than half a mile deep in the ocean. They're so unusual that researchers almost created a separate category just for them in the Echinoderm family tree, which includes other marine life like starfish and sea urchins. And then there's the New Zealand scampi, a lobster-like crustacean that lives in muddy burrows on the ocean floor. This creature snacks on jelly-like blobs, ghost sharks, and pretty much anything that floats by. Even seaweeds are unique there, although they're not as cool as predatory sponges. Oh, by the way, an interesting fact about the regions close to New Zealand is that they hide active underwater volcanoes. The most famous one is called Brothers Seamount. It's located about 210 miles northeast of New Zealand. It's a massive underwater volcano with a crater at the top, constantly bubbling with heat and chemicals. What makes it fascinating is that these vents, called black smokers, support ecosystems that don't rely on sunlight. Instead, bacteria use chemicals like sulfur to produce energy, a process called chemosynthesis. These bacteria form the base of a food chain that includes species like tube worms and deep-sea shrimp, which are adapted to survive in extreme heat, pressure, and complete darkness. That's not typical for most ocean life, which depends on photosynthesis and stable conditions. Brothers Seamount is also loaded with metals like copper and zinc, making it scientifically valuable and, potentially, commercially tempting. So it goes without saying that Zealandia is incredibly important to scientists. It offers a unique window into Earth's geological and biological history. It's like a time machine and a natural lab that helps scientists piece together Earth's history. So, in the end, could New Zealand end up underwater due to water levels rising naturally with each century? If you're imagining New Zealand slowly disappearing beneath the waves, like a real-life Atlantis myth, don't. Even with sea levels rising, that kind of full-on submersion just isn't likely, even in the worst-case scenario. New Zealand's tallest point, Mount Aoraki, stands over 12,000 feet above sea level. For the ocean to cover that, it would need to rise by more than 2 miles. And unless Earth suddenly turns into a water balloon, that's not happening. Okay, but what about sinking? Could it sink like Zealandia did? Zealandia sank because it had a thin, stretched-out crust. It didn't have the strength to stay up. But New Zealand? It's sitting on the sturdy, lifted backbone of the continent. In fact, thanks to tectonic plate collisions, parts of it are actually rising every year. And not just rising, shaking too. Zealandia has active tectonic plate boundaries, which is why the region gets so many earthquakes and volcanic events. So, while Zealandia may be almost entirely underwater, New Zealand is holding its ground, literally. In other words, the Kiwi won't need swimming lessons anytime soon.
There's a country that runs on volcanoes, rivers, and lakes for power. Sounds like a fantasy game setting, but it's all true. Welcome to New Zealand. This island nation already gets about 85% of its electricity from renewable resources like hydro, geothermal, and wind. That's impressive, but it's actually just getting started. Now, let's zoom in on a place called the South Taranaki Bight. It's a stretch of sea off the west coast of the North Island. At first glance, it looks just like any other tropical postcard location, but it's hiding New Zealand's clean energy jackpot. It's all about the South Taranaki Offshore Wind Project. This game changer in the world of green power will build wind turbines in the ocean, enough to generate almost 1 gigawatt of clean electricity. That's roughly enough to power over 430,000 homes. To put that into perspective, that's almost a quarter of all the households in New Zealand. If the country can pull this off, it won't just become greener. It'll kickstart an entirely new profitable industry: offshore wind. It means over 600 new jobs in construction, operations, and maintenance. And these jobs are future-proof. The kind that won't disappear as the world moves away from oil and gas. It also means more tech development for the country, and of course, more energy independence. Experts also believe it will secure more business investment in New Zealand, and the entire offshore wind sector should bring in around $30 billion to the country's GDP between now and 2050. The South Taranaki Bight is a perfect location for this project. It gets consistent, powerful winds, not stormy and chaotic, but steady and useful. That's exactly what you want for wind turbines. and the seabed here is deep, but not too deep, which is ideal for turbine platforms. They usually build traditional wind turbines on land or in shallow water where they can stand on firm foundations. But the ones planned here are offshore wind turbines, which means engineers can install them in deeper water, further from land, and in stronger wind zones. The electricity the turbines generate will move to a major onshore connection point through cables. From there, it will travel via national grid infrastructure to power homes, businesses, and industry. To make all this happen, the project team has already laid the groundwork. One of the coolest things they've done so far is a floating LiDAR campaign. LiDAR means light detection and ranging, and it's like radar, but with lasers. They put this high-tech gear on a floating buoy that stays in the ocean for months. It collects crazy precise data about wind speeds, wave patterns, sea temperature, currents. That's all the stuff you need to plan an offshore power plant. If the project works out, it will take New Zealand to a new green level. Right now, the country still uses fossil fuels during peak demand times, or when the hydro lakes run low. Most of those fossil fuels come from overseas, and they're expensive, polluting, and unreliable. But if offshore wind goes big, it could plug those energy gaps, especially during winter when winds are stronger and electricity use spikes. And if New Zealand produces more clean energy than it needs, it could start exporting it as green hydrogen. It's hydrogen made from water using renewable electricity, which is really healthy for our planet. The South Taranaki offshore wind project, if all goes well, will be more than a local win. It'll be a blueprint, a model other regions of New Zealand could follow. There are wind-rich areas all around the country's coastline, and floating offshore technology makes them more accessible than ever. Some scientists believe New Zealand could build up to 8 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2050. That's 8 times what's being planned in Taranaki right now. Imagine what that could do. Clean energy for the whole country, plus exports, plus global leadership in a brand new industry. Of course, it's not all smooth sailing, and there are some challenges on the way. First, there's marine life. Any large ocean project needs to be careful about how it affects whales, dolphins, fish, and seabirds. That's why scientists are studying marine baseline in the early planning stages to map out the local ecosystem and avoid any harm to it. They've already started this process in the Taranaki Bight and are gathering information so turbines can be placed where they'll do the least damage. There's also a high cost. Offshore wind is more expensive than onshore right now, but costs are dropping as the tech improves and scales up. Plus, the long-term benefits, cleaner air, local jobs, energy security, make it worth it. And then there are potential problems with authorities, local tribes, iwi, and the community. They all must support the project for it to become a reality, and it's not always working out. For example, when a 34-page review article about the risks of the wind farms for the environment came out, local authorities were reviewing it. But if everything goes well, construction in the South Taranaki Bight could begin in the late 2020s. Iceland is a great example of a country where green, renewable energy works and rules. 9 out of 10 homes in this country stay warm thanks to underground geothermal heat. Thanks to its wild geology with volcanoes, hot springs, and glaciers, Iceland is packed with natural energy. It sits right on a super active part of the Earth's crust, where 2 tectonic plates meet. That's why it has so much geothermal power and hot water just bubbles up from below. Glaciers cover 11% of the country, and when they melt in the warmer months, they feed rivers that flow down from the mountains. That water's energy is turned into hydropower. Plus, Iceland also has lots of wind power potential. They just haven't tapped into it much yet. The only major thing still using fossil fuels in Iceland is transport, like cars and planes. But it wasn't always this way. Not long ago, Iceland relied mostly on imported oil and coal, especially before the 1970s. Back then, they mostly used geothermal energy for bathing and washing clothes. The change came when oil prices went up like crazy, and Iceland realized importing fuel was just too risky and expensive. The country needed its own stable, affordable energy. One farmer figured out how to use natural hot water to heat his home. Local communities followed his lead, and soon towns were drilling deeper underground to get even hotter water. That hot water then went through pipes around neighborhoods and heated entire towns. It worked so well that the authorities set up a special fund to give out loans for geothermal drilling. Others started building small hydro plants. By 1950, Iceland had over 500 tiny hydropower stations powering farms and villages. Later, the authorities stepped in again to attract big international companies. If Iceland could offer cheap green power, maybe new industries would move in, create jobs, and help grow the economy. That plan worked, and it also helped build a country-wide power grid. And it was all possible, not just because Iceland has amazing natural resources, but also thanks to teamwork of the authorities and regular citizens. A lot of countries today face the same problems. Nepal, for example, has tons of hydropower potential, but needs investment. Countries in East Africa have loads of underground geothermal energy, but not enough training or tech to use it. Iceland has been sharing what they know for decades. Since 1979, over 1,000 people from other countries have gone there to study geothermal energy. Icelandic companies have helped build geothermal systems in more than 50 countries, including the world's biggest one in China, which now heats homes for over 1 million people. And you don't even need volcanoes to use geothermal energy. New technology means you can use lower temperatures to heat and cool buildings. Paris, for example, has one of Europe's largest geothermal heating systems. Around 25% of Europeans live in places where this tech could work.
New Zealand's most active and dangerous volcano is erupting again, reminding everyone of its power. This time, ash from the White Island volcano has drifted across flight paths, sparking concern and forcing airports to cancel flights. Locals know all too well that this volcano should never be underestimated. The current eruption comes just a few years after a catastrophic explosion claimed the lives of tourists and guides who were on the island. But against all odds, some people managed to survive what could have been their tragic end. It was December 9th, 2019. The sky was clear and blue over the Bay of Plenty, a big bay on the northern coast of New Zealand's North Island. It felt like the perfect day for sightseeing. The main attraction in the area is the White Island volcano, also known as Whakaari. It is huge, with its peak rising about 1,000 feet above sea level. Its impressive size and stunning views have been drawing visitors from all over the world for years. Actually, we're talking about very brave visitors, as being near an active volcano comes with serious dangers, such as explosive eruptions, fatal emissions of sulfur dioxide, superheated steam, earthquakes, rockfalls, and even tsunamis. Experts normally say that these catastrophic events are extremely rare, which is true, but rare doesn't mean impossible. On that doomed day, 47 people were having the best time exploring the island. Little did they know that everything was about to change at exactly 2:11 that afternoon when the volcano erupted. A fisherman who was out at sea near the volcano described it as a huge explosion going off, forming a mushroom cloud as it expanded. Photos taken from a distance and satellite images show that a thick white cloud filled the sky a couple of moments after the eruption. Authorities then issued an alert about a moderate volcanic eruption, warning people living near the volcano to stay inside and close their windows and doors to prevent ash from coming in. But the authorities' nightmare truly began when they checked cameras on the island and saw what appeared to be people going inside the crater just 1 minute before the eruption. Right at that moment, they knew they had to launch an urgent rescue operation. Time was running out, and every second counted. The people were in serious danger. 7 rescue helicopters were sent to the scene with paramedics on board. They managed to find the first survivors, and 7 of them were seriously hurt. At around 5 in the morning the next day, officials announced that 23 people had been rescued from the island. They knew more people were still trapped there, but rescue teams could not communicate with any of them. And there was something even more worrying in the back of their minds: the risk and fear that a second eruption might happen at any moment. Recovery efforts during that week were really challenging due to ongoing seismic and volcanic activity. Heavy rain, low visibility, and toxic gases made things even tougher for the teams on the ground. Unfortunately, 22 people lost their lives in this tragedy, either due to the explosion or from their injuries. Those who survived tell heroic stories about that day. One of the survivors was from Sydney and was only 19 years old when he went on a family trip to New Zealand. The itinerary included a visit to the famous White Island volcano. He said that his tour group, including his family members, was caught in a relatively flat and open area on their walk down from the crater when the volcano erupted. Then he was thrown over a mound by the force of the eruption before curling up in the fetal position, covering his head with his hands. He felt like he was being hammered by a sandstorm, like in movies where characters can't see a few feet in front of them. Once the eruption clouds lifted, the island returned to the clear day it had been before, except everything was covered in gray ash. That was when he saw his father struggling to breathe. He remembers spending about 20 minutes thinking about what he could do, even though he was feeling unbearable pain. With hope of survival, he gathered all his strength to get up and seek help. Eventually, he managed to reach the pier where he was rescued and taken to a hospital. He spent 8 days in intensive care and, like a hero, managed to survive. Unfortunately, he never saw his family again. Along with other survivors, this young man was one of those who sought justice after the incident. According to him, he wasn't given any indication of dangers before going on the trip, and only had a short safety briefing that day with no emergency plans in place. This brings us to an important question regarding this tragedy. How could no one have predicted what was going to happen? Were they all really caught by surprise? To answer these questions, we need to understand a bit about the nature of volcanoes and how they behave. So, New Zealand is situated on 2 tectonic plates. These plates are always moving very slowly, and what happens there, specifically, is that the Pacific Plate slides under the Indo-Australian Plate. The problem is that when this subduction or sliding process happens, it can create deep trenches. As the edge of the denser plate moves down, the pressure and temperature around it go up. This causes changes in the plate that melt the rock above it, and that melted rock can rise and come through a volcano. This geological process has helped shape the beauty of New Zealand with its rugged terrain and stunning mountain landscape, but it can also be destructive. There are several active volcanoes in the country, and White Island is just one of them. Eruptions like the one that happened in 2019 have been occurring for tens of millions of years. White Island volcano is a stratovolcano, which means it has that classic cone shape like Stromboli in the Mediterranean or Mount St. Helens in Washington. It's also part of the Ring of Fire, a region filled with volcanoes that surrounds the Pacific Ocean. What makes this area so dangerous is the molten rock or magma hiding underneath these volcanoes. This magma is usually thick and filled with gas, which can lead to powerful and explosive eruptions. According to specialists, the eruption on White Island was likely a steam eruption. Stratovolcanoes often have many cracks that let water in. When this water meets hot magma, it turns into superheated steam that usually escapes through vents. If these vents get blocked, pressure builds up, which can lead to an explosive eruption that blasts steam, hot ash, and rock into the air. The thing with steam eruptions is that they're considered relatively small eruptions, but still fatal if you get too close. And it's precisely because they're small that they become very hard to predict. They can strike without warning, catching everyone off guard and turning a seemingly calm day into a life-threatening situation in an instant. So, about that day in 2019. Yep, the volcano really surprised the tourists and their guides, but we need to clarify one thing. About a month earlier, experts did notice an increase in toxic sulfur dioxide coming from the volcano. They raised the danger alert to level 2, which stands for moderate to heightened volcanic unrest. But what happened was that, back then, it was still pretty common for tour operators to keep running their tours, even with a level 2 alert. Unfortunately, the country learned the hard way that volcano tourism can be really dangerous, and White Island has been off limits since then. I mean, you can't get too close anymore, going there by boat or helicopter. But for those with a taste for adventure, scenic flights are still an option, allowing you to catch a glimpse of the volcano from a safe distance.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.